Chapter 1747. The 3 stone huts where God King Duanmu cultivated seemed extremely simple. There was no extravagant display, or any luxurious decor. There were only 3 extremely ordinary stone huts and nothing else. It was very difficult to believe that this was a God King's dwelling, and a supreme God King's at that. After all, it just seemed too ordinary. In fact, it was not even as great as the cultivation places of small clans with gods. The place where a mighty God King cultivated was actually composed of 3 ordinary stone huts. This sight took all the overgods by surprise. To them, God King Duanmu's dwelling would definitely be extravagant, well decorated, and covered in treasures as a supreme God King. However, only 3 regular stone huts were presented before them. The stone used to build the huts were the most common material in the saints' world. They were nothing valuable, and the passage of time had already left behind irremovable traces. They were not protected by any formations. Is this really where God King Duanmu cultivated? Have we come to the wrong place? An early overgod asked within the group. He was the ancestor of a clan from the divine kingdom of Qingyang. He was not the only one who felt doubtful, as similar thoughts crossed the heads of all the overgods present. Where God King Duanmu cultivated was just a little too shabby, and it was even worse than their personal space for cultivation. They found it very difficult to believe that a supreme God King would actually cultivate in a place like this. Master Chanlong looked around and said, "This is already the very depths of the dwelling, so it must be where God King Duanmu normally resided. It can't be wrong." Master Chanlong had been of great help along the way. Without him, the overgods would not have even managed to enter the dwelling, so he had already become a person of prestige among all the overgods. Everything he said carried weight, so his words just then had confirmed this place to be where God King Duanmu cultivated. Uncertainty flickered through the eyes of many overgods. They observed the surroundings carefully, and they allowed the senses of their soul to envelope the region, filling the entire space. Although they were unable to extend their senses into the stone huts, they had found that no formations existed there either. Many of the overgods wanted to move. They yearned for the 3 stone huts, but none of them moved by themselves. Instead, they all looked towards Master Chanlong and were extremely cautious. Although they had failed to sense the existence of any formations, they all understood that this did not mean there were no formations hidden from their senses. If Master Chanlong did not move, they did not dare to move either. Master Chanlong closed his eyes, and the 8 trigrams disc in his hand shone with black and white light. Vaguely, a huge taiji diagram revolved around him as mysterious inscriptions flickered. A while later, Master Chanlong opened his eyes. A gleam of joy flickered through his eyes before he quickly hid it. However, under the attention of all the overgod present, his sudden change was captured by them all. "Please wait. I will go ahead and check first," Master Chanlong said to everyone as if nothing had happened. His 8 trigrams disc hovered above his head, and shone with resplendent light as he walked forwards. The overgods all followed behind Master Chanlong as uncertainty flickered through their eyes. At this moment, Master Chanlong sped up abruptly and turned into a blur. He charged towards the first stone hut quickly. Master Chanlong's every single movement weighed on the minds of everyone. So when they saw him suddenly speed up, a gleam of light flickered through the eyes of all the overgods behind him. Without any hesitation, their speeds exploded, and they turned into blurs as well as they charged towards the first hut as quickly as they could. Jianchen was not an exception. He also planned to charge towards the stone hut, but as soon as he began to move, Fairy Haoyu's voice rang out in his head. "Don't go over." These 3 short words caused Jianchen shiver inside. He watched the overgods around him charge towards the first stone hut in a hurry while he halted without any hesitation. At the same time, he secretly communicated with Ling Hogong and the other overgods of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Ling Hogong and the other overgods became stunned when they received Jianchen's message. Ling Hogong immediately halted. The other overgods did not stop immediately after receiving Jianchen's warning, but they did slow down. Master Chanlong, who was just about to reach the first hut, smiled slyly. He came to a sudden halt before rapidly retreating. It was also at this moment that the space ripped open silently. A streak of light that was several dozen meters in length emerged, and cleaved towards everyone with surging sword chi. The expressions of all the overgods changed drastically from the sudden turn of events. Before they could even curse the slyness of Master Chanlong, they all came to a halt and retreated even faster than they had run before. Not everyone managed to escape. Under the sword chi, over a dozen overgods became immobilized. They were unable to dodge the sword chi, so they could only take it on forcefully. The overgods were all experienced, so they bellowed out together. They used their entire strength to launch their strongest attack towards the sword chi in an attempt to disperse it with the force of over a dozen people. However, God King Duanmu had left behind the sword chi before he passed away. It was so powerful that even God Kings were unable to endure it, let alone overgods. The huge sword chi tore through the attacks from the overgods like they were nothing and sliced down in a flash. 8 overgods turned to dust silently, and not even any blood or flesh was left behind. The other overgods were closer to the edge of the sword chi, so they had not been directly struck and fortunately survived. However, they all vomited blood and were heavily injured. 3 of them were only left with a small part of their body. They were extremely heavily wounded. Master Chanlong, you're despicable. The surviving overgods all became furious as they swore at Master Chanlong before immediately ingesting a large number of healing pills to recover. The other overgods who had managed to retreat in time looked at Master Chanlong furiously. They understood very well that they had fallen for Master Chanlong's schemes. If they had been a little slower before, they probably would have died to the huge sword chi. Chapter 1748. Liquid Lime. Master Chanlong sighed and said sorrowfully, I failed to sense that God King Duanmu had prepared something there. If I hadn't reacted in time, the sword chi would have killed me as well. I am deeply sorry for what you've suffered. Master Chanlong, it looks like you wants us all to die so that you can enjoy God King Duanmu's legacy all by yourself. Yang Kai from the divine kingdom of Pingtian said coldly. He was a late overgod and did not fear Master Chanlong. Master Chanlong said innocently, You're mistaken. I never had such intentions. I did say before that I was only going ahead to check. I never said it would be safe. It was you who charged over. The overgods were speechless with that. Master Chanlong was telling the truth. They could only blame themselves. However, everyone's attitude towards Master Chanlong changed slightly after this incident. They remained cautious about him, no longer trusting him like before. Master Chanlong did not care about this at all. The items God King Duanmu left behind were just far too attractive. Compared to them, fame and prestige were nothing. Thank you, Brother Jianchen. Ling Hogong's grateful voice rang out in Jianchen's head. All the other overgods from the divine kingdom of Pingtian thanked Jianchen secretly. If it were not for Jianchen's warning, some of them probably would have died to the sword chi as well. Brother Jianchen, how did you know that there was danger ahead? Yang Kai also asked secretly. Senior Yang Kai, you're overestimating me. How would I know whether there's danger or not? I just felt like these 3 stone huts are a little too simple, replied Jianchen. The other overgods had heard his words as well. Sai, looks like Brother Jianchen is the calm one. We were too reckless earlier. None of us were able to resist God King Duanmu's treasures, so our desire clouded our vigilance. Bing Lu sighed gently. They clearly understood what Jianchen was trying to say. They had lost their usual calm due to their attraction to the treasure in the room, and the provocation of the people around them. Jianchen said nothing more. Instead, he stared at where the sword chi had swung down from before sternly. He was quite disturbed. He had just witnessed 8 overgods being reduced to nothingness before a strand of sword chi that was enough to cause everyone present to pale. They did not even leave behind their space rings. The other overgods only managed to survive because they were towards the edge of the attack. They had not received the full blow of the sword chi, or they probably would not be alive either. Is this the strength of a God King? Even God King Duanmu, who failed to make the rankings of the God King's throne, is so powerful. Just how terrifyingly powerful are Adriana and Protector Shui then? Jianchen thought. He could not help but think of the 2 God Kings he had encountered on the Tianyuan continent. The 2 of them were experts who were ranked on the God King's throne, making them much more powerful than Duanmu. Protector Shui in particular was even ranked 9th. In the past, Even though Jianchen felt that Adriana and Protector Shui were unfathomable, even though he knew they were God Kings, he had no concept of a God King at all. Only after the sword chi from God King Duanmu appeared did he gain a deeper understanding towards the terrifying power of Adriana and Protector Shui. In his eyes, overgods were experts who could reign supreme over an entire region. A divine kingdom only possessed a little over a dozen overgods. Yet they were so weak before God King Duanmu's sword chi. They were not even as great as ants. Everyone, I will continue checking for dangers, Master Chanlong said at this moment. The inscriptions on the disc in his hand flickered rapidly before hovering before him. Master Chanlong stared at the disc. He formed a seal with his hand, advancing towards the stone hut as if he had predicted anything. Everyone no longer trusted Master Chanlong as much after the previous punishment. As a result, they did not follow him when they saw him checking for dangers as they were afraid that they would fall for his tricks again. After all, no one present was as great as Master Chanlong at formations. If Master Chanlong really did want to use the formations here against them, they would struggle to sense it. Master Chanlong got closer and closer to the first hut under everyone's gazes. When he arrived at the position before, a strand of sword chi did not appear from the space there. Clearly, there was only that single strand of sword chi from before. In the end, Master Chanlong arrived before the stone hut successfully. He pressed his hand against the stone door slowly and pushed it gently. The door immediately opened, and Master Chanlong beamed, entering it in a flash. Did he just enter like that? The several dozen overgods were all stunned when they saw how Master Chanlong just disappeared into the stone hut. They found it rather difficult to believe that he had entered the hut so easily. However, they all responded accordingly. Without any hesitation, they all charged into the stone hut as well. This time they did not come across any obstacles. Clearly, there was only that single strand of sword chi from before. Jianchen, Ling Hogong and the other overgods all entered the stone hut as well. When Jianchen stepped through the entrance, the landscape around him changed. He had arrived in an extremely large space, and around him were the several dozen overgods who had entered before him. The stone hut only seemed to be around 10 square meters in size, but clearly, God King Duanmu had modified its interior with his laws of space, creating a miniature world. That's liquid lime. Suddenly someone cried out. There was a basin-sized ditch near a few boulders. It was filled with a milky liquid that gave off a delightful fragrance. It really is liquid lime. Liquid lime is said to be able to cleanse godhood experts of impurities, and can refine their origin energy. It can also suppress various poisons, and remove any resistance developed from ingesting large numbers of heavenly resources. It's extremely valuable, where every drop is priceless. That's not all to it. If the liquid lime is used on those below godhood, just a single drop will be enough to alter their constitution, and even strengthen their ability to comprehend, making comprehending the laws of the world much easier. Liquid lime doesn't only increase the affinity to comprehend for those below deity. Even for overgods, it is effective. High-quality liquid lime can even help god kings, making them invaluable. The only downside is that the increase in ability to comprehend is only temporarily. Once the effects subside, everything returns to normal. That's a huge basin of liquid lime. That's at least 1,000 drops. Look at it. God King Duanmu's a supreme god king after all, so how could he be shabby? The overgods present all became filled with eagerness with the appearance of the basin of liquid lime. All of them charged over joyfully. Before they even arrived before it, they had already taken out various bottles, ready to store the liquid lime away. Everyone wanted the liquid lime. At the same time, no one wished for someone else to be faster than them, so the person at the very front naturally became the target of attacks. An overgod who had comprehended the laws of wind was at the forefront, so he drew in the attacks of several dozen overgods. Several dozen terrifying attacks shot towards the late overgod with surging energy. Chapter 1749. A fierce struggle. The expression of the late overgod at the forefront who comprehended the laws of wind changed drastically. Even though there were only a few late overgods in the group, he would still become heavily injured from the several dozen attacks, or even directly die. After all, A few of the attacks came from late overgods as well. The liquid lime was precious, but it was nothing compared to his life. At that moment, the overgod at the very front immediately gave up on the liquid lime without any hesitation at all. With a single movement, he left behind an afterimage and reappeared several hundred meters away, avoiding all their attacks. With his departure, the overgods at the very front became Yongkai from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, Master Qianlong, and 5 other late overgods. The 7 of them basically moved at the same speed as they charged towards the liquid lime. Liquid lime was useful to even overgods. What truly attracted their attention was the liquid lime's effect that increased one's ability to comprehend, as that would make comprehending the laws of the world much easier. If they were lucky, they could even become god kings thanks to it. However, liquid lime was very rare and precious. Basically, all the clans and sects that were far more powerful had monopolized it, making it very difficult for them to purchase any. They would naturally become interested in such a large basin of liquid lime. In their eyes, the liquid lime was a chance to reach God King. Even though it was only a tiny sliver of a chance, they were still greatly attracted to it. Powerful origin energy and laws pulsed in the surroundings as the several dozen mid and early overgods struck out at that moment. They launched powerful attacks towards the 7 late overgods at the very front in an attempt to stop them. Ling Hogong had struck out as well, swinging his sword to send a sword chi directly towards Master Qianlong. It was chaotic. At that moment, no one cared whether they were fighting against mid or late overgods. Their desire for the liquid lime had drawn all of them over. All the 7 late overgods at the very front used protective treasures to block the attacks. They did not slow down at all, and even sped up instead. On the other hand, a formation disc hovered above Master Qianlong's head. It was immediately activated, and it enveloped him in a powerful, protective formation. The formation remained around him the entire time, moving along with him. With a series of booms, the attack struck the 7 late overgods at the forefront. Their protective treasures and formations flickered. Aside from Master Qianlong, everyone else paled. They had all endured attacks from several experts at the same level as them, so even with defensive treasures, it was impossible for them to emerge unscathed. However, the 7 overgods did not slow down at all after taking on these attacks. Instead, they accelerated after being hit, and arrived before the stone basin with the liquid lime in a single moment. The stone basin was only the size of a large bowl, yet there were 7 of them in total. It was impossible for them to all crowd around the basin, so they all attacked the people around them in order to collect the liquid lime. They wanted to force back their competitors. The disturbance was huge from the fight between several overgods. The terrifying shockwaves reverberated towards the basin, and it immediately cracked. The violent energy splayed the liquid lime into the air, splitting the liquid into hundreds of globs. As the energy spread out, the liquid lime also flew out in all directions like scattered blossoms. "Take the liquid lime. Every man for himself," someone cried out. With that, no one cared about the late overgods anymore. They all scattered in every direction as their eyes burned with desire. They chased the scattering liquid lime as quickly as possible as various jade bottles appeared in their hands. The late overgod who had comprehended the laws of wind was the fastest. No one was faster than him in terms of speed, so he collected 3 globs, totaling to over 20 droplets. Jianchen looked around, and his eyes narrowed very soon. His eyes lit up. 2 globs of liquid lime, one large and one small, directly flew in his direction. However, 3 other overgods approached the 2 globs rapidly. They were clearly targeting these globs. Jianchen charged over without any hesitation at full speed. With a flip of his hand, a jade bottle appeared, and he immediately scooped up the 2 globs of liquid lime. The eyes of the 3 overgods who originally wanted to take the liquid lime turned cold. They glared at Jianchen, and did not leave to go collect the other liquid lime. Instead, they continued onwards in the same direction, and directly encircled Jianchen. They all wanted the larger glob that Jianchen had taken away. That single glob of liquid lime was 3 or 5 times larger than the smaller one. A gleam of cold light flashed through Jianchen's eyes when he sensed their movement. With a thought, the 2 strands of profound sword chi immediately appeared, radiating with sword intent. The sword chi was so powerful that it drew over the attention of all the overgods present. They all looked towards Jianchen in fear. It had already been a year since Jianchen last used the profound sword chi. Jianchen had already fully recovered the power of his soul during that period of time, so he could use 2 strands of profound sword chi again. The expressions of the 3 overgods who charged towards Jianchen changed abruptly when they saw the profound sword chi appear. They all came to a halt as fear filled their eyes as well. They were 2 early overgods and 1 mid-overgod. However, they no longer dared to approach Jianchen as his profound sword chi had appeared. Jianchen did not shoot his profound sword chi. Instead, he let them hover above his head to deter the people around him. Afterwards, he clasped his hands towards the 3 overgods and said, "I only want these 2 globs. There are still a few more in the surroundings that have not been collected, so if you continue wasting time here, you might have to leave empty-handed." The 3 overgods mulled over the thought. In the end, they did not risk trying to take what Jianchen had collected. They scattered to fight over the few remaining globs of liquid lime in the surroundings. In just a few seconds, the basin of liquid lime had all been collected. The late overgods naturally collected the most, with the overgod who comprehended the laws of wind in particular. He seemed to have collected over 50 droplets. Of course, not everyone managed to collect something. The weaker overgods were left empty-handed. They failed to even get a single droplet, and they had even suffered heavy injuries that left them pale-faced. The overgods who had been injured by the hidden sword chi earlier failed to collect anything as well as they were still injured. Their faces were extremely sunken. Jianchen put his bottle of liquid lime away happily. Although he did not obtain a lot of it, he still managed to acquire around 20 droplets. He was satisfied with that. He knew that his only method of fending off overgods was through his profound sword chi. If he used up both strands, he would no longer be an overgod's opponent. It was already quite impressive for him to be able to obtain around 20 droplets. Chapter 1750. The chaotic heaven sword style. After the liquid lime had all been collected, everyone scattered in search of their own fortuitous encounters. They scoured the land. The overgods of the divine kingdom of Pingtian scattered and headed off in different directions. However, Ling Hogong and Jianchen moved together as they discussed the sword. Jianchen and Ling Hogong shared their experiences on cultivation as they searched through the space. Although they could use the senses of their soul, there were some things that could avoid this detection method. Such things could only be found by the naked eye at a close distance. Boom! At this moment, there was a rumble in the distance, and an intense battle erupted. Over a dozen overgods fought against each other, and more people joined the fight. Even 3 late overgods took part in the devastating battle. It's the chaotic heavens sword style. Someone has obtained the chaotic heavens sword style. A vague cry rang out along with the constant booms. The chaotic heavens sword style? Jianchen murmured softly. Clearly, this was the first time he had heard of something like that. On the other hand, a gleam of light flashed through Ling Hogong's eyes as desire appeared in them. He said, "The chaotic heaven sword style is the cultivation method God King Duanmu practiced. He also used it for his comprehension of the laws of the sword. It's not just a cultivation method. It possesses several powerful sword techniques as well. It's said that an expert of the primordial realm created it. I never expected that it would appear here." As he said that, the battle in the distance became more and more intense. There were now 5 late overgods taking part, including Yang Kai from the divine kingdom of Pingtian. The battle for the sword style was devastating, covering many people with blood and wounds. The person who had originally obtained the chaotic heavens sword style was a mid-god, but he was immediately faced with the attacks of 5 late overgods. In the end, he directly died on the spot, while the sword style ended up in the hands of a late overgod. However, as soon as the late overgod obtained the chaotic heavens sword style, he received the attacks of everyone present, becoming heavily injured in a single instance. In the end, he threw out several defensive formation discs and blew up his own weapon to finally break out, fleeing with his injured body. Suddenly, an azure figure shot over hurriedly from afar. It moved extremely quickly, catching up with the late overgod in a single moment. It caught the injured late overgod off guard. and pierced his head before fleeing after grabbing the chaotic heavens sword style. He left the miniature world in the blink of an eye. He was so fast that the other late overgods were unable to catch up. Ao Tong, don't you think you'll have any peace once you make it out of here? Someone roared out furiously from behind. Their voice was filled with regret. To no surprise, the person who had stolen the chaotic heavens sword style in the end was the late overgod who had comprehended the laws of wind. Jian Chen was astounded as he watched on from afar. A late overgod had actually fallen just like that. He was the first late overgod to die in God King Duanmu's dwelling. At this moment, the world began to tremble violently. The sky began to collapse as the ground cracked. Violent laws of space wreaked havoc, causing the entire place to shake wildly. The space in the distance was reduced to nothingness at a visible rate. It had actually vanished as if a terrifying beast had devoured it, leading to a huge commotion. Oh no, the world's collapsing. This world has existed for too long. After so much time without God King Duanmu's support of laws of space, it can't endure the fierce attacks. Run, or we'll be reduced to nothingness along with the space. We'll be doomed. The overgods all cried out as they flew towards the entrance quickly. Jian Chen and Ling Hogong reacted in the first moment as well, fleeing towards the entrance as quickly as they could. Large expanses of space collapsed behind the two of them, reduced to nothingness. Spatial cracks littered everywhere, making it extremely terrifying. The space collapsed extremely quickly, basically tailing Jian Chen and Ling Hogong. If the two of them had been slightly slower, they would have been devoured mercilessly. Further behind, there were two early overgods far away from the entrance. Coupled with the fact that they flew relatively slowly, they directly vanished in the collapsing space under Jian Chen and Ling Hogong's gazes. Their fates were unknown. Jian Chen and Ling Hogong secretly gritted their teeth and pushed their speeds to the limit. They seemed to have become faint blurs as they charged towards the entrance as quickly as possible. Jian Chen had even made the preparations to use the linear lightning release at any time. Fortunately, the two of them reached the entrance unscathed and made their way out instantly, vanishing from the collapsing world. Only two of the stone huts remained outside. The first stone hut had been reduced to dust. A few more overgods were lost among those who gathered outside the hut. Aside from the mid and late overgods who had died during the battle for the chaotic heavens sword style, for overgods had vanished because they could not escape from the collapsing space in time. Ao Tong really isn't here. Looks like he has left the dwelling with the chaotic heavens sword style. A stern voice rang out. It came from a late overgod who had fought for the chaotic heavens sword style. What can we do? He has comprehended the laws of wind. If he wants to leave, we can't stop him, said Yang Kai with an extremely sunken face. It was said that a primordial realm expert created the chaotic heavens sword style. It was an unimaginable treasure to the overgods, enough for them to forsake the future of their clans. Everyone desired it. At this moment, the heavy smell of blood suddenly appeared. The overgods who had just emerged from the first stone hut all frowned. When they looked in the direction of the bloody smell, they saw over 100 corpses before the second and third stone huts. The corpses were incomplete. All of them had suffered extremely horrific deaths, either losing most of their bodies or losing their heads completely. The missing body parts seemed to have vanished altogether as well, without anything remaining. These gods sure are bold. An overgod said coldly when he saw what had happened. All the corpses there belonged to gods. When they were still in the first stone hut, the gods had tried to enter the second and third stone huts boldly. Master Chanlong chuckled. I was just worrying about how difficult the traps God King Duanmu set would be to dismantle. These gods sure are helpful, helping us a great deal by removing the traps God King Duanmu set. Looking at the handprints on the stone doors, clearly, a few gods have entered. The two huts are already safe now. Chapter 1751. A God King's corpse this time. No one doubted Master Chanlong because the handprints on the stone door were clear evidence that people had already entered the place. The traps God King Duanmu had set around probably only had a single attack. The first hut was the best example. The remaining overgods all entered the second hut. There was also a miniature world within the second hut. Moreover, God King Duanmu's laws of space had modified it, so it was much larger than the first hut. Mountains obscured the space, and there was a range of mountains that spanned as far as the eye could see. Sharp sword chi radiated from the mountains with a sense of supremacy. They were extremely powerful. There were a few mirror-like rock faces among the endless stretch of mountains. A few slashes were left on the rock faces, which were the source of the sword chi that permeated the surroundings. The sharp intent made all the overgods shiver. A few gods were scattered before the rock face with the slashes. All their gazes were fixated on it. They wanted to comprehend the laws of the sword within. With a boom, a few gods slashed at the mountains up ahead. They wanted to take the slashes on the rock face away with them. However, the mountains had already changed from being soaked in the sword chi for so long. They had become extraordinarily tough, so the full-powered attacks of the gods only left a mark on its surface. Severing the entire mountain and taking it away was basically impossible. This should be where God King Duanmu comprehended the sword, said Ling Hogong. His gaze was filled with joy. To him, this place was basically a supreme, treasured land. This was because he comprehended the laws of the sword. If he continued his comprehension here, it would definitely become much easier for him. A gleam of light flickered through Jian Chen's eyes as he too became excited. The sword slashes possessed the residue of what God King Duanmu had comprehended from the laws of the sword. To him, they would be just too helpful. They could assist him in comprehending the laws of the sword and reach the partial achievement of sword spirit in an even shorter amount of time. The overgods left very quickly. They had already understood this place. It was only where God King Duanmu comprehended the laws of the sword. It was not beneficial to them, nor were there any treasures, so it naturally did not attract them. In the blink of an eye, all the overgods aside from Jian Chen and Ling Hogong had left. Jian Chen, we both comprehend the laws of the sword, so this place is basically a blessed land to the two of us. Why don't we cultivate here for a while? Ling Hogong asked. He wanted to stay behind. Jian Chen, leave here immediately. Go to the third hut. If I've guessed correctly, the third hut contains what I need. At this moment, Fairy Hao Yu's voice rang out in Jian Chen's head. Jian Chen clasped his fist towards Ling Hogong without any change in expression at all and said, "There's still one more hut left. I want to try my luck there for any impressive treasures, and see what I can get." Ling Hogong clasped his fist back at Jian Chen and said, "I won't be going to the third hut. I want to cultivate here for a while in hopes that my comprehension of the laws of the sword will increase. Jian Chen, I wish you luck." Jian Chen left after bidding farewell to Ling Hogong. He looked towards the third stone hut. The ground outside the third hut was covered with corpses of gods. All of them were missing body parts, having suffered miserable deaths. Jian Chen casually glanced past the corpses, and his eyes suddenly narrowed. His gaze fell onto one of their faces. He just so happened to recognize the deceased god. He was one of the mid-gods from the Weiner clan who had hurried over when he, Mo Ling, and Ando Fu had opened the entrance to the dwelling. Close to him was a second person that Jian Chen recognized. He was the second mid-god from the Weiner clan. I never thought that the two mid-gods of the Weiner clan would both die here. Jian Chen sighed secretly as he felt pity. Then he made his way over the many corpses and entered the third hut. Compared to the two huts prior, the space within the third hut was much smaller. When Jian Chen entered, he discovered that all the overgods had stopped there. Their gazes were all fixed ahead with mixed emotions. Jian Chen followed their gazes, and his eyes narrowed suddenly as well. Afterwards, his face also became filled with mixed emotions. There was admiration as well as pity. Before him sat a middle-aged man in green robes on a jade pedestal. His eyes were closed, and although he radiated with invisible sword chi that was filled with the presence of supremacy, he did not have any presence of life at all. God King Duanmu. Jian Chen's feeling became extremely mixed when he saw the middle-aged man. He was a supreme expert who had made it onto the God King's throne. Although he did not make the rankings, his strength was still shocking. There were barely anyone at God King who was his opponent. However, such a glorious expert had died in his own dwelling. Besides that, it was thanks to the assistance of God King Duanmu that his way of the sword could reach sword spirit. If it were not for the mark that God King Duanmu had left in his disciples' dwelling to pass on his laws, It would not have been so easy for him to reach Sword Spirit. I never thought that the third stone hut would actually be where God King Duanmu passed away. Master Qianlong sighed gently as he stared at the lifeless God King before him with mixed feelings. His voice was filled with pity. God King Duanmu is extremely powerful. Probably only those who have been ranked on the God King's throne can defeat him, and it's only defeating him. God King Duanmu has the laws of space, so if he wants to flee, he'll be even faster than the laws of wind. Killing him is almost impossible. God King Duanmu is so powerful, so I wonder who killed him. Was it a supreme expert from the top rankings of the God King's throne? Or was it a primordial realm expert? If it was a primordial realm expert, God King Duanmu would indeed struggle to escape. What a pity, what a pity! If God King Duanmu did not die, there was an extremely great chance of him reaching the primordial realm, and standing at the very top of the world, only beneath the heavens. A few overgods sighed in amazement as their gazes towards God King Duanmu were filled with admiration. This was the admiration for someone powerful. Even though God King Duanmu was already dead, the glory he had left behind still affected them. There seems to be words beside God King Duanmu. An overgod said suddenly. Everyone looked over. Indeed, there were words carved on the ground. Since you are able to make it here, you are fated to make it here. You must swear to the world that after you obtain this king's legacy and become accomplished in cultivation that you personally slay Huayan, a vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult. The expressions of all the overgods changed after they read these words. All of their faces had even become filled with fear when they saw the words, Empyrean demon cult. And it was like they feared and dreaded the Empyrean demon cult dearly. Chapter 1752. A foot planted in the primordial realm. Chen also became doubtful inside when he saw all their expressions. Although he had never heard of the Empyrean demon cult before, he could tell from their reactions that it was probably a powerful organization. For a moment, the surroundings descended into a strange silence. All the overgods stared at the words before God King Duanmu, and the light in their eyes flickered uneasily. Further away were some gods. They had entered the place before the overgods, but they had been forced far away ever since the overgods entered because they were only gods. They did not dare to get any closer. A long while later, an overgod finally sighed gently. I never thought that God King Duanmu had actually died to the hands of the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan, and that you'd have to swear to the world to become enemies with him in the future to inherit God King Duanmu's legacy. Another overgod also shook his head and said gently, with that being the case, obtaining God King Duanmu's legacy will lead to the Empyrean demon cult hunting you down. Is there still anyone who wants the legacy? I'd rather turn down the legacy than become enemies with the Empyrean demon cult, because it will only lead to death. The Empyrean demon cult is just too terrifying. We cannot afford to offend them. The overgods all sighed regretfully. All of them feared the Empyrean demon cult dearly, which prevented them from accepting God King Duanmu's legacy. Can you only obtain God King Duanmu's legacy by becoming enemies with the Empyrean demon cult? God King Duanmu is dead. Yet we can't even obtain a legacy from someone who's no longer alive even with our strength? An energetic voice rang out. The speaker was a middle-aged man in red robes. Clearly, he wanted to break the rules that God King Duanmu had set down before he had died and forcefully take the legacy. Uncertainty immediately flickered through the eyes of many overgods when they heard that. Clearly they were wavering. I do in fact admire God King Duanmu, except the rules he set are just too tough. Basically no one would accept them. Why leave the legacy here when we can take it out with us, and allow your glory to continue within the saints' world? You never know, there really might be a day when we can avenge you, said an old man. With that he took out a low-quality saint artifact from his space ring. He bowed politely towards God King Duanmu's corpse and said with a gruff voice, "Apologies, God King Duanmu." With that, he sent the flying sword out. Swish! The flying sword turned into a silver streak of light that flew directly towards God King Duanmu's corpse. The eyes of all the overgods present shone brightly. They stared at the flying sword as they gathered their power secretly in the meantime. Once they confirmed there were no dangers, they would charge over as quickly as possible. The flying sword moved extremely quickly, reaching 3 meters away from God King Duanmu in a single instance. However, at this moment, the terrifying power of laws suddenly appeared, enveloping God King Duanmu's corpse as a huge light screen. When the flying sword collided with the power of laws, it was reduced to dust silently. At the same time, God King Duanmu's corpse faded under the power of laws. His corpse also underwent a drastic change at that moment. The green-robed, middle-aged man vanished and a white, seated skeleton replaced it. The skeleton had a space ring on its finger, and there was a bead the size of a pigeon's egg in its head. It shone with a faint golden light. God King Duanmu had already been dead for several 100,000 years, so his flesh had already rotted away. He only used a technique before his death to maintain his image. Once the technique was removed, his true remains would naturally be exposed. The power of laws that had suddenly appeared clearly destroyed God King Duanmu's image. It's a golden core of laws. It's a golden core of laws. The expressions of all the overgods changed the moment they saw the bead. They cried out uncontrollably as they were now extremely shocked. No one paid any attention to the space ring, as they had been expecting it. It's said that once you comprehend the laws of the world to an extremely profound level, you will be able to condense a golden core of laws. At the same time, the golden core of laws represents a primordial realm expert. I never thought that God King Duanmu would have actually condensed a golden core of laws. Doesn't that mean he broke through God King and reached the primordial realm? Some of the overgods said. They were unable to remain composed. No. God King Duanmu's golden core of laws is rather different. It's said that a primordial realm expert's golden core of laws shines with extremely bright light, while God King Duanmu's golden core of laws is dull, and without the luster of gold. He was clearly in the process of going from God King to the primordial realm. He only had a foot planted in the primordial realm while the other foot was still planted at God King, said Yang Kai. All the overgods were perturbed. None of them had thought that God King Duanmu already had a foot planted in the primordial realm. He just needed to overcome this transition. When his golden core of laws had been completely condensed, he would become a true primordial realm expert. However, everyone soon became deeply attracted by God King Duanmu's legacy once again. They all began to attack the power of laws that protected God King Duanmu's remains. It did not matter if he had a foot planted in the primordial realm. He was already dead, reduced to a skeleton. The power of laws was very powerful, and it was enough to turn a low-quality saint artifact to dust in a single moment. However, as long as they did not approach the power of laws, it would not be able to harm them, so they could tell that the power of laws only acted as protection and could not actively attack them. The overgods all stood far away as they sent sword chi or beams of energy towards the power of laws. They wanted to waste it away bit by bit. For a while, terrifying shockwaves of energy rolled through the surroundings as booms constantly rang out. The overgods did not hold back as they attempted to smash through the protective power of laws. Fairy Haoyu, is there what you need here? Jianchen did not attack the power of laws and spoke to Fairy Haoyu instead. I never thought that Duanmu had already broken through and condensed a golden core of laws. That has me taken aback. What I need is Duanmu's space ring. As a supreme god king, it's impossible for his space ring to not contain supreme-grade divine crystals. There might even be 5-colored divine crystals. Aside from that, there's some energy that still hasn't dispersed from the remains, which will be helpful for me. Jianchen, I need you to buy time for me so that I can approach his remains, replied Fairy Haoyu. At this moment, there was a flash of golden light. It pierced through the forehead of an overgod instantly, killing the early overgod on the spot. The golden streak of light continued towards a second early overgod after killing the first one. However, the death of the first early overgod had already made everyone cautious. The second overgod immediately roared out, and the power of laws surged from him. He directly swung his axe towards the golden streak of light. Boom! The early overgod immediately vomited blood, and was blown backwards while the golden streak of light had stopped as well. It was actually a flying sword that glimmered with golden light. Chapter 1753. opportunity, all the overgods who attacked the power of laws that protected God King Duanmu stopped. They stared at the hovering golden sword sharply as they became rather stern. Just a single flying sword had claimed the life of an early overgod, and it had even knocked back a second overgod, causing the overgod to vomit blood. Even the late overgods slightly feared such strength. More importantly, they had not sensed where the flying sword had come from at all. Jianchen stared at the flying sword and frowned. He became suspicious and thought, why does that flying sword seem so familiar? Who is launching sneak attacks? Please show yourself, Yang Kai called out. What sneak attack? That sounds horrible. Bao Bao is killing you out in the open. A rather childish voice rang out. The voice stunned all the overgods. They collectively turned around and stared at the golden flying sword in surprise. Clearly, the voice had come from the sword. It was also at this moment that a young girl suddenly appeared above the sword. She seemed only 4 or 5 years old. Her skin was white, and she was extremely cute. However, she was currently glaring at the overgods furiously. It's actually a sword spirit. Is this sword God King Duanmu's treasure? Bing Lu said with some surprise. Jianchen came to a realization as well. The reason why he found the sword to be rather familiar was because it was the sword God King Duanmu wielded. You do have some insight. Correct, God King Duanmu is Bao Bao's master. Since you're unwilling to follow his rules, you obviously lose the right to master's legacy. Please leave immediately. Bao Bao will never show any mercy to anyone who disturbs master's slumber. Bao Bao will kill them all. The sword spirit said coldly. Although she did not seem old, her childish voice was filled with killing intent. Clearly, the sword had followed God King Duanmu for countless years. It had gone through battles everywhere with him, and had grown with him. Ha 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 ha, a flying sword is actually threatening us. This is just hilarious. A late overgod sneered before directly charging towards the golden sword. He grabbed the handle, attempting to subdue the sword. The other overgods moved at that moment as well. They all charged towards the flying sword. It was God King Duanmu's treasure, so to them, it was something that could watch over and protect their entire clan. Jianchen, it's extremely likely that God King Duanmu's legacy is related to the flying sword. It might even lie in the artifact spirit's hand. If you want it, I can help you obtain it once I recover my body, said Fairy Haoyu. Fairy Haoyu, that's not a priority. Let's think about how we can get you close to God King Duanmu's remains instead, said Jianchen. He did not become interested at all. He had come to God King Duanmu's dwelling this time mainly because of Fairy Haoyu as well as to find some treasures for his cultivation, so that he could break through with the chaotic body as soon as possible. God King Duanmu's legacy was just some cultivation methods and battle skills. For cultivation methods, he had the chaotic body, let alone God King Duanmu's cultivation method, but even the cultivation method of a few primordial realm experts would not interest him. For battle skills, he had the ones from the artifact spirit. Many of the battle skills were created by the old master of the sword spirits. He had even grasped the god tier sword technique, the profound sword chi. He naturally felt no interest towards a god king's sword techniques. Several dozen overgods began fighting against the golden sword on the other side. Not all the overgods had taken part in this battle, but close to 30 people were now involved in a fierce struggle. After all, the sword spirit controlled the flying sword. She had no need to fear anyone present if she fought against them individually, but she could only flee when up against close to 30 overgods. The sword turned into a streak of light as it flitted about, dodging everyone's attacks and only fighting back once in a while. However, those with insight could tell with a single glance that the flying sword had completely lost the upper hand. It completely relied on its speed to dodge and weave between the overgods. The shockwaves from their fighting are too intense. I won't be able to endure it just as a soul, so you have to find a way to stop them from fighting. Only then can I come out, Fairy Haoyu said grimly. But there's a powerful barrier of laws around God King Duanmu's remains. How will you get past that? Jianchen asked with a frown. I'll pay a price and temporarily suppress the power. However, I'll need half a minute. Jianchen became stern when he heard that. He knew that Fairy Haoyu wanted him to buy half a minute for her. During this time, She could not afford to suffer any injuries at all. After all, she was just too fragile as a soul. Even an origin realm expert could heavily wound her, let alone overgods. Although half a minute was short, he had to endure the attacks of all the overgods. Not a single overgod present would let Fairy Hao Yu approach God King Duanmu's remains. Jianchen looked around and discovered that there were over a dozen overgods who did not take part in the fight against the flying sword. At the same time, extremely terrifying pulses of energy were emitted from the battle between the sword and the overgods. Even the gods struggled to gain their footing, so it was inconvenient for Fairy Hao Yu's soul to move around under these circumstances. At this moment, the flying sword turned into a golden streak of light and vanished from the space in a single instance. It had fled outside. Clearly, it was not the opponent of close to 30 overgods. The overgods did not give up. They all pursued it. The power of laws protected God King Duanmu's remains anyway, so no one could enter. As a result, they did not worry about someone taking away God King Duanmu's space ring in the meantime at all. In the blink of an eye, only Jianchen and the other overgods who did not take part in the fight remained. A few of them were early overgods and knew that before mid or even late overgods, it would be very difficult for them to obtain the flying sword. As a result, they saved their strength and accumulated power instead, preparing for one last fight. This is a great opportunity. Jianchen's eyes lit up. He knew that an opportunity had presented itself. However, he did not move immediately. Instead, he said to the overgods of the divine kingdom of Pingtian, Guhan Shui, Bing Lu, Feng Buell, there's something I want to discuss with you. Guhan Shui, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell were all early overgods, so they did not take part in the battle for the flying sword. Chapter 1754. Hao Yu's might. Guhan Shui, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell all looked towards the seated Jianchen when they heard his voice. Jianchen, what do you have to discuss with us? Feel free to go ahead. The hunchbacked Bing Lu smiled. Jianchen, what is it? Is it good or bad? If it's something good, you can't forget about me, Guhan Shui giggled. She spoke like Jianchen was an old friend of hers. Jianchen, feel free to mention it. If it's within our abilities, we will definitely assist you, Feng Buell also replied. No one else knew about their conversation, but Bing Lu, Guhan Shui, and Feng Buell all treated Jianchen rather politely. They were extremely friendly, unwilling to give up any opportunity. Jianchen's cultivation was a great weakness in their eyes, so if he really started fighting, it would be impossible for him to defeat an early overgod with just the laws of the sword at overgod. However, they knew even more that as long as Jianchen had some time, he would be able to cultivate his way up. Once he reached the same level of cultivation as his comprehension, there would barely be anyone who was his opponent at the same level thanks to the strength of the laws of the sword. He might even become a second Ling Hogong, using his laws of the sword to reach a stalemate against a mid-overgod as an early overgod. If Jianchen's terrifying sword chi that could kill early overgods instantly was considered, there would probably be no mid-overgods that were Jianchen's opponent. The three overgods would naturally try to get as close to an expert like that as possible. They spoke to him as if even if they could not befriend him, they wanted to avoid becoming enemies. After a while of silence, Jianchen replied secretly, Bing Lu, Guhan Shui, Feng Buell, I hope that you can assist me by keeping three early overgods busy to the best of your abilities. Jianchen had asked the three of them because he trusted them the most out of the overgods present. Although a few of the other overgods did want to befriend him, he simply did not trust him, even if there were a few from the royal city of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Jianchen did not dare to ask Yang Kai even more so, as he was a late overgod. He was just too powerful, so Jianchen could not afford to trust him. Keep three early overgods busy? Jianchen, what are you trying to do? Guhan Shui asked in surprise. You will naturally understand in detail later. What is important is that it's extremely likely for the overgods to attack me. I only need you to keep three overgods busy for half a minute. As remuneration, I will give you a soul recovery pill each, said Jianchen. What? A soul recovery pill? The three overgods were all startled when they heard that. They became filled with disbelief. Soul recovery pills were extremely valuable. Only a single pill was needed for an early overgod to recover all of their power of the soul in a few seconds. It was extremely valuable, to the point where it could not be purchased in the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Aside from the soul recovery pill, I'll give you each 2 droplets of liquid lime. And I'll owe you a personal favor. All you need to do is keep 3 early overgods busy for half a minute, said Jianchen. He did not hold back at all to allow Fairy Haoyu to approach God King Duanmu's remains. All right, we'll agree. We'll keep 3 overgods busy for half a minute, but we'll be helpless against the other overgods. After a moment of hesitation, Bing Lu, Feng Buell, and Guhan Shui all agreed. Although they could vaguely sense that Jianchen wanted to lay his hands on God King Duanmu's remains, they did not really care. They knew that it was impossible for them to obtain God King Duanmu's space ring and his legacy. Even if they managed to stop Jianchen, the objects would still end up in the hands of a late overgod. With their strength at early overgod, it was very difficult for them to benefit at all. If that were the case, they would be better off agreeing to Jianchen. Not only could they improve their relationship with him, but they could also benefit from him. Of course, what they truly valued was the favor that Jianchen owed them. Jianchen was extremely frank as well. He gave the 3 of them the soul recovery pills and the droplets of liquid lime on the spot. Jianchen only had 10 soul recovery pills in total. He had given Ando Fu and Mo Ling 1 each, and split the remaining pills between him and Xinjian. So he and Xinjian both got 4 each. He had already consumed 2 of the 4 pills earlier, so he only possessed 2 pills on him. As a result, he had taken 2 pills from Xinjian out of the 3 he had given to the 3 overgods. He kept 1 last pill on him just in case. Jianchen could utilize the pills he had given away better by consuming them himself, allowing him to kill 6 early overgods in total. However, he needed a period of time to recover the power of the soul after consuming a pill. Jianchen definitely would not have the time to recover in the upcoming battle. As a result, he needed the 3 overgods to keep 3 other overgods busy, so that the pressure on him would be reduced. The only thing he possessed that would interest overgods were the pills. Although the other pills on him were valuable, they were nothing to overgods. Jianchen had paid quite the price for Fairy Haoyu to be able to condense her body. So what if you've lost a few soul recovery pills? Once Fairy Haoyu gets through successfully and obtains God King Duanmu's space ring, I'll be paid back by countless folds. My chaotic body might be able to break through successfully as well, thought Jianchen as he comforted himself. The overgods who chased the golden flying sword could return at any time. So Jianchen did not dare to waste any time. Immediately, he let out the bright moon divine hall from his space ring. As the doors swung open, Fairy Haoyu slowly emerged in the form of a soul. Xinjian also came out. The other overgods nearby naturally noticed Jianchen's actions. None of them behaved carelessly. Jianchen immediately put away the bright moon divine hall as well. However, the moment he put it away, Fairy Haoyu suddenly became a blur that directly charged for the power of laws around God King Duanmu. A mere soul desires God King Duanmu's possession. What a joke! Aside from Guhan Shui, Feng Buell, and Bing Lu, all the other overgods sneered scornfully. However, what happened next made their mouths drop. When Fairy Haoyu approached the screen of power, she was not directly destroyed as they had expected. Her illusionary body began to shine extraordinarily bright at that moment. The light seemed to be a layer of white flames that burned away at her soul, causing her soul to dull at a visible rate. On the other hand, her soul slowly fused into the power of laws under the burning light. All the power that came in contact with her body shuddered gently before slowly moving away, as if it was afraid of coming in contact with her. The shudder was only what people on the outside saw. In reality, the layer of power trembled in fear. At that moment, none of the overgods had sensed that an unimaginably terrifying pressure had appeared from Fairy Haoyu. It was just that Fairy Haoyu had used the pressure with great skill. So it all surged towards the power of laws. The pressure seemed to be the might of the heavens. It had completely surpassed the power of laws, causing the power there to shy away. Of course, Fairy Haoyu had also paid an unimaginable price to use this terrifying pressure. Her soul was being burned away, becoming weaker and weaker. Chapter 1755. An intense battle. Not only did the overgods present all become stunned as they watched Fairy Hao Yu slowly merge into the power of laws, but even the eyes of Guhan Shui, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell narrowed. Disbelief filled their faces. The layer of power that protected God King Duanmu's remains were the laws of someone who had a foot planted in the primordial realm. Even though it could not attack actively and could only protect the remains, this did not mean it was easy to approach the power. Even most god kings would become injured if they approached the power of laws, let alone over gods. This was because the power had almost surpassed the level of God King. However, now that Fairy Hao Yu had approached it just as a soul, not only did she avoid dispersing, but she even merged into it slowly. It seemed like she was going to pass through the layer of power. Naturally, this sight shocked all the overgods present. Jianchen, who is she? Guhan Shui's voice rang out in Jianchen's head. Her voice was filled with shock. Who she is not important, but I can tell you that she's a supreme expert. Jianchen replied to Bing Lu, Guhan Shui, and Feng Buell. The expressions of the three all changed when they heard that. At the same time, a pill appeared in Shenjian's hand. This pill was something he obtained from the dwelling of God King Duanmu's disciple. It was known as a fire cloud pill. It could temporarily raise the consumer's cultivation by a minor level, ignoring the laws of the world. However, the price of consuming it was extremely great. No one would be willing to ingest the pill unless it was a life or death situation. Shenjian consumed the fire cloud pill without any hesitation. A powerful presence immediately began to radiate from Shenjian as soon as the pill reached Shenjian's stomach, and his cultivation rapidly soared at that moment as well. It went from early god to mid-god. A fire cloud pill appeared in Jianchen's hand as well. He thought, I hope the fire cloud pill is effective on chaotic force as well. Jianchen consumed the fire cloud pill without any hesitation as well. At that moment, he felt like his chaotic force go on a rampage. Although his chaotic force had not reached the level of the 10th layer, Jianchen could clearly sense that it flowed even more violently than before. It felt like it had gone berserk, and it was clearly more powerful than before. Fire cloud pills were good things, but the price to consume them was just too heavy, so he did not give the pill to Guhan Shui, Bing Lu, or Feng Buell. Even if he did give it to them, they would not consume it at a time like this. Oh no, the soul is trying to steal God King Duanmu's things. Stop her. We can't let her succeed. Just as Shenjian and Jianchen consumed the fire cloud pill, the overgods all responded. Hostility poured from their eyes as they charged towards Fairy Hao Yu without any hesitation. Two people swung their hands and sent a beam of powerful origin energy towards Fairy Hao Yu. Bing Lu, Guhan Shui, Feng Buell move quickly. You'll be assisting a peak expert. Once the peak expert rebuilds her body, you'll definitely benefit as well. Jianchen said to Bing Lu, Guhan Shui, and Feng Buell hurriedly before arriving before Fairy Hao Yu in a flash. He used his body as a shield to protect Fairy Hao Yu. At the same time, the flying snow sword appeared in his hand. He radiated with surging sword intent as he used his complete comprehension of the laws of the sword. He sent out two powerful strands of sword chi to disperse the incoming origin energy. Boom! The sword chi and origin energy collided and erupted with a powerful shockwave of energy. Jianchen's feet seemed to be rooted to the ground as he stood there like a mountain. His body had become a tough shield. The energy all struck Jianchen's body. It had completely failed to reach the Fairy Hao Yu behind him. At the same time, Bing Lu, Guhan Shui, and Feng Buell moved as well. They charged towards the overgods with gritted teeth and kept three of them busy. Aside from Jianchen, there were a total of 14 overgods gathered there. Feng Buell, Bing Lu, and Guhan Shui kept 3 overgods busy in total, so there were 8 remaining. The 8 overgods all charged towards Jianchen at that moment. All of them surged with aggression and hostility. Even though they feared Jianchen slightly, they had completely forgotten about it with God King Duanmu's legacy presented before them. A will that splits the heavens. The sword shakes and stars shatter. Shenjian roared out, and his cloudstream sword emitted a pulse that quickly expanded towards 2 of the overgods. Shenjian's laws of the sword had reached the great perfection of sword origin, equivalent to peak god. His cultivation had increased from the fire cloud pill as well, going from early god to mid god. Moreover, the laws of the sword were one of the laws with the greatest defensive power, so his sword technique was enough to kill regular late gods. Even if it were not enough to threaten early overgods, they needed to face it seriously. Aside from Ling Hogong, the other overgods all comprehended laws that were weaker than the laws of the sword in terms of power. Ling Hogong possessed the power to challenge those stronger than him with his laws of the sword. He was able to reach a stalemate against a mid-overgod as an early overgod, so there was no need to mention the current Xinjian. The faces of the two early overgod turned cold when they saw Xinjian's attack. The pulse did not pose any threat to them, and it only forced them to face it seriously. Humph, a mere god dares to challenge overgods? Your bravery is praiseworthy, but you're just looking to die. The two early overgods sneered. One of them directly launched a palm strike in origin energy and the power of laws surged forth, dismantling Xinjian's ripple. Soon afterwards, the two overgods changed in direction. They no longer charged towards Jianqin. Their gazes were cold as they charged towards Xinjian with killing intent. Xinjian became extremely grim. Without a doubt, it was a huge challenge for him to fight two overgods with his current strength. Fortunately, he only needed to last half a minute. A will that splits the heavens. The sword extends and galaxies extinguish. Suddenly, Xinjian roared out and specks of light suddenly began to glimmer around him. It transformed into an illusionary galaxy, radiating with grandeur. His entire body seemed to have fused with the galaxy, becoming the god in the illusionary starry sky. As he stabbed out with his cloudstream sword, the enormous force of the galaxy immediately surged out towards the two overgods with a tremendous and ancient presence. The two early overgods became rather stern as they faced this force. At that moment, the two of them could actually sense a sliver of threat from it, which shocked them very much. They were only facing a god after all. On the other side, Jianqin stood with the flying snow sword while a damaged piece of armor had already appeared on him. He had obtained this armor from the Sea Realm. In reality, it was a god artifact of rather high quality, except it was just too damaged, so it was almost completely worthless. However, Jianqin could no longer care about whether the armor would be useful or not now that he had to keep 6 early overgods busy for half a minute. He had equipped it. Chapter 1756. Brutality. Jianqin, don't you dare try to take God King Duanmu's legacy for yourself. Jianqin, move or today will be your last day alive. The 6 early overgods who charged towards Jianqin yelled out aggressively. Before they even arrived, they had sent streams of energy towards Jianqin. Jianqin had equipped the damaged armor, which protected less than a third of his body. His white robes and hair ruffled despite the absence of wind. At the same time, a shocking sword intent radiated from his body. The sword intent was so powerful that the 6 incoming overgods all became stern. Sky-severing strike. Jianqin bellowed out. He lifted the flying snow sword above his head, and a stream of light that was 300 meters in length immediately condensed. With a sky full of snow, the huge sword chi directly cleaved down. As it fell, the surrounding space seemed to freeze, forming a sword domain. It enveloped the attacks from the 6 overgods. Boom. The collision between the sword chi and the attacks resulted in a huge boom. They dispersed at the same time, causing terrifying energy and fragments of sword chi to splay into the surroundings. Jianqin's body trembled, and he seemed to pale slightly. His inner organs surged like the ocean. However, he remained still, forming a tough shield as he stood there firmly. He blocked the incoming energy to protect Fairy Hao Yu. At the same time, 2 strands of profound sword chi appeared above his head. It shone with dazzling light and surged with sword chi, giving off a terrifying pressure. The expressions of the 6 overgods around Jianqin immediately changed as soon as the profound sword chi had appeared. A smear of dread and deep fear appeared in their eyes. They had personally witnessed the might of the profound sword chi. It could easily claim the lives of early overgods. Back off if you don't want to die, or I'll have to kill you mercilessly, Jianqin called out. His presence surged as he held off multiple enemies by himself. 6 seconds had passed by now. The 6 overgods looked at each other as they became hesitant. What are we afraid of? We're 6 people. Even if his secret technique is powerful, I refuse to believe that we can't stop it when the 6 of us work together. Let's get him. Finally, the 6 overgods stopped hesitating after one of them called out. They encircled Jianchen and shot towards him rapidly. A cold light flickered through Jianchen's eyes. With a thought, one strand of profound sword qi above his head immediately shot out as a streak of white light towards one of the overgods. The moment the profound sword qi shot out, the 6 overgods stopped. They all struck out to stop the profound sword qi. Origin energy pulsed around them wildly as their power of laws condensed into sharp swords that shot towards the profound sword qi. However, the profound sword qi simply moved too quickly, and it basically exceeded their reaction speed. Even though they had moved very quickly, they were still much slower compared to the profound sword qi. Before their attacks came in contact with the profound sword qi, the sword qi had already neared the forehead of an overgod. Spurt. Blood was tossed into the air as a bloody mark appeared on the forehead of one of the overgods. The profound sword qi had pierced his forehead without any obstructions and wiped out his soul. The attacks from the 5 other overgods that aimed to stop the profound sword qi missed and struck Jianchen instead. Jianchen's body shuddered. Blood leaked from the corner of his mouth, as 4 terrifying gashes appeared on his body. His blood dyed his white robes red. The 5th attack had landed on the damaged piece of armor. The armor was a god artifact after all. Even after becoming so damaged, it was still extremely tough. The overgod's attack did not leave behind a single mark, but the force was still dispersed through Jianchen's body. Jianchen finally took a step back helplessly. However, the force pushing him back was just too powerful, so he clearly did not manage to disperse it all from just that single step. When he wanted to take another step back, he gritted his teeth firmly and planted his flying snow sword into the ground, forcefully stopping himself. However, just something like that worsened his condition, making him spurt blood from his mouth. He could not afford to take another step back. If he did, he could come in contact with Fairy Hao Yu's soul. Jianchen wiped away the blood from the corner of his mouth. Even though he was heavily injured, he did not show any weakness on his face at all. With a flip of his hand, he took out a 7th-grade truth tear healing pill that he had obtained from the pill room as well as a soul recovery pill. He ingested both. As the pills reached his stomach, his wounds immediately began to heal rapidly. The power of his soul that he had consumed to use a strand of profound sword qi quickly recovered, as well as the soul recovery pill melted away. At the same time, Jianchen circulated his chaotic force wildly. He completely used the chaotic force to his advantage, taking advantage of all the time he could get to heal. Jianchen's wounds healed at an extremely astonishing rate from the chaotic force and pill. If any of the overgods present had seen it, they would have been completely astounded. 15 seconds had passed now. The firmament of the sea. At this moment, a bellow rang out. One of the 5 overgods began to use a truth tier battle skill. Behind him, a vast ocean appeared. It fused with the surroundings as it moved all the energy in the surroundings, enveloping Jianchen. Fire God's Finger. Another overgod used a battle skill. Flames surged around him as a massive finger condensed and extended towards Jianchen. Absolute darkness. Palm of Destruction. Death Soul Severing Slash. The 5 overgods all used truth tier battle skills. Terrifying pressure permeated the surroundings as 5 extremely terrifying powers tore through the surroundings and rolled towards Jianchen devastatingly. Jianchen had never felt so grim before. With a thought, he sent out the 2nd strand of profound sword qi to fend off the 5 battle skills. The profound sword qi turned into a streak of light and collided with the 1st sword qi in a single moment. With a boom, the 1st battle skill collapsed without being able to put up any resistance at all. The profound sword qi continued towards the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th battle skills. Boom, 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 boom. Along with a string of rumbles, the profound sword qi destroyed the battle skills from the 5 overgods. The profound sword qi did not disperse yet either. It flickered as it directly shot towards one of the overgods like a brave warrior. The overgod became extremely stern. He immediately bellowed out as energy surged from his body. He swung his sickle towards the profound sword qi with his power of laws. He had put his life on the line with that attack. Chapter 1757. Half a minute after tearing through the 5 battle skills from the overgods, the profound sword chi had weakened greatly. It was nowhere near as powerful as it was at the beginning. In the end, it shattered under the slash from the sickle. However, due to the momentum of the attack, the scattered sword chi continued in the same direction towards the early overgod that wielded a sickle. Caught off guard, the early overgod was struck by the shattered sword chi. Every single strand of the residual sword chi pierced his body easily, creating many holes. The power from the laws of the sword constantly gnawed away at him around his wounds, causing his condition to worsen. The overgod grunted and left the battle with his sickle. He was heavily injured and incapacitated. Jianchen's power of the soul was completely drained after sending out the 2 strands of sword chi. He felt waves of dizziness descend upon him. However, as the soul recovery pill came into play, the power of his soul immediately began to replenish rapidly. 21 seconds had passed by now. Kill him. The 4 other overgods all went crazy. They basically charged towards Jianchen with bloodshot eyes, as they could already see that most of Fairy Haoyu had already merged into the power of laws that protected God King Duanmu's remains. The dizziness in Jianchen's head receded swiftly, and he felt his head clear up again. Even though the power of his soul had replenished, he was clearly unable to use a 3rd strand of profound sword chi, with just the few seconds that had passed. Daoyuo sword! Jianchen bellowed out. He formed a seal with one hand, and the flying snow sword immediately shone with a golden light. A golden sword chi condensed around the flying snow sword. As he swung the sword, the golden sword chi shot out with a swish, colliding with the sword in one of the overgod's hands. As the Daoyuo sword chi dispersed, the early overgod who had received the attack came to a halt as well. He staggered a few steps backwards helplessly. However, the 3 other overgods had all arrived before Jianchen now. One of them used a huge hammer to strike towards Jianchen's chest, while the other 2 both used swords. They stabbed out simultaneously with the laws of fire and the laws of darkness. The stab with the laws of fire extended towards Jianchen while the attack with the laws of darkness went around Jianchen and headed directly towards the Fairy Haoyu behind him. Jianchen's eyes narrowed when he saw the attack that headed towards Fairy Haoyu. Then he roared out, and his eyes shone shockingly. Red light vaguely appeared in his pupils. This was the sign of him about to lose his mind. His main mission was to protect Fairy Haoyu for half a minute. No matter how dangerous it was, he could not dodge during this period of time, nor could he retreat. He had to face the attacks head-on. The sword was already stabbed towards Fairy Haoyu, so she was in danger now. Jianchen extended his left hand in that crucial moment. Chaotic force and silver-white light enveloped his hand. He directly grabbed the sword with his hand. At the same time, he placed the flying snow sword across his body to block the hammer that traveled towards his chest. Spurt. The sword with the laws of fire had already stabbed into Jianchen, piercing him all the way through. The tip of the sword dripped with the blood of his chaotic body. Each droplet of blood possessed a lot of power. It could even kill weaker receival experts. The hand that Jianchen had used to grab the sword became bloodied as well. His flesh and skin had been destroyed, revealing white bone. Fortunately, Jianchen had managed to grab the sword tightly, preventing it from reaching Fairy Haoyu. His body stood before Fairy Haoyu like a tough shield, blocking all the shockwaves of energy. 24 seconds had passed now. At this moment, the 3 overgods had already approached Jianchen. None of them were weaker than Jianchen, yet he now had to face the 3 of them at the same time. He was struggling to stop them, yet he also had to protect Fairy Haoyu. The red light in Jianchen's eyes became more and more intense while the world in Jianchen's eyes gradually reddened. Jianchen knew that he was losing his mind, but he could do nothing about it right now. Seeing how Fairy Haoyu had almost merged into the power of laws, determination suddenly flooded his eyes, and he called out, "Explode flying snow sword!" With a deafening boom, the flying snow sword exploded with dazzling white light. The explosion contained the laws of the sword and strands of chaotic force. Immediately, a terrifying energy expanded with the laws of the sword and chaotic force, and it pushed back the 3 early overgods. Jianchen removed the spear he had obtained from killing the skinny over-god earlier at this moment. He held it in one hand and drove the tip deeply into the ground, using it to stabilize himself. As Jianchen clung onto the spear, he remained on the spot as he endured the storm-like barrage from the explosion of the flying snow sword. He did not take a single step back, but he paid a great price as a result. His wounds became even worse and blood spurted from his mouth time and time again. He had become sheet white now. 27 seconds had passed now. The three early overgods stabilized themselves very soon. Before the shockwaves of energy had dispersed, they charged through the energy and headed towards Jianchen again. Jianchen glared at the three. At this moment, he could feel his consciousness fade slightly while the world before him had gradually become filled with red. In the last 3 seconds, the bloodied Jianchen suddenly charged towards the three early overgods. He stretched out his hands and grabbed the swords from the two overgods, and used the damaged armor to forcefully endure the attack from the hammer. Boom! The hammer blew Jianchen far away. As he flew backwards, he vomited multiple times. His wounds were horrendous. Quick, kill the soul. After blowing Jianchen away, the three overgods immediately charged towards Fairy Haoyu. Their gazes were icy. However, it was also at this time that Fairy Haoyu's illusionary soul merged into the power of laws completely. She vanished from the overgod's vision. Only a cold voice that was filled with killing intent rang out. If you dare kill the two of them, I'll wipe out your entire clan once I recover my strength. Even if you flee to the ends of the earth, I'll take your lives. Even the God King of your divine kingdom won't be able to protect you. The expressions of the three early overgods changed when they heard that. Even God Kings would not be able to protect them. Was the soul a supreme God King in the past? Or even beyond God King? Shunjian collapsed on the ground on the other side, bloodied and wounded. Although the two overgods he fought did not suffer any significant wounds, they seemed to be in a rather horrible condition. Shunjian's sword chi had ripped their clothes. Chapter 1758. Pushed to the end, the two early overgods Shunjian had stopped were both cold. They swore. God damn it. We're two mighty overgods. Yet a mere god kept us busy for so long, allowing that soul to approach God King Duanmu's remains. Just a mere god has actually made us lose God King Duanmu's legacy. This is unforgivable. One of the overgods in tattered clothes said coldly. The crimes of this god is so great that even killing him won't be enough. We have to let him understand that death will only be a relief. The two overgods were sunken-faced. Killing intent flooded their eyes. They were two early overgods. They possessed an advantage in cultivation, comprehension, and numbers, yet it was so arduous for them to kill a single god. They were even reduced to such a horrible condition, and were completely embarrassed. Their desire to kill Shunjian was extremely intense. They directly ignored Fairy Haoyu's threats. The threat from a fragile soul was great enough to stun them for a moment, but they did not believe that Fairy Haoyu would actually possess such strength. At this moment, the bloodied Jianchen climbed up from the ground. He clung onto his last shred of consciousness, and arrived before Shunjian as quickly as possible. He directly grabbed Shunjian, who was so heavily injured that he could not even stand. At the same time, he formed a seal with his hand. Linear lightning release. Jianchen became engulfed in light as he turned into a bolt of lightning, shooting towards the entrance with unbelievable speed. In just a single instance, he had arrived at the entrance, and was about to escape. The eyes of all the early overgods narrowed in shock as they watched Jianchen approach the entrance in a single instance. Without any exception, none of them were able to do anything about it. Even they could not stop Jianchen with the speed he currently demonstrated. What shocking speed! Even the laws of wind pale in comparison. An overgod sighed in surprise. He had never seen someone move so quickly in his entire life. The figures of Jianchen and Shunjian had even begun to stretch as they flew. They were like streams of light. After reaching Sword Spirit, Jianchen could naturally move much faster with the linear lightning release. However, a burly man appeared at the entrance at this moment. He was dejected, appearing there with regret and gloom. He had clearly just come in. The burly man was not weak. He was a mid-overgod. Evidently, he was one of the overgods who had left earlier in pursuit of the golden sword. As soon as the burly man entered the third hut, Jianchen just so happened to collide into him. Bang! A visible ripple appeared from their collision, expanding out into the surroundings. Jianchen's body was knocked back, and the terrifying speed that linear lightning release brought suddenly vanished. Jianchen felt like his entire body had become dislocated from the collision as his entire body wrenched in pain. His organs had completely turned to mush, and he vomited blood again and again. Caught off guard, the burly man staggered backwards from the collision. Each step left behind a deep imprint. In the end, he fell on his bottom. His face became completely flushed as his organs also churned from the collision. Which brat ran into me? The burly man leapt up and bellowed out. His face was pale with rage. He had just come in from outside and had not grasped the situation. Yet someone had knocked him onto his bottom. He would naturally be enraged. What he did not know was that his sudden entry had cut off all of Jianchen's hopes to escape, forcing him back into despair. Jianchen had become even more wounded after their collision. Soon afterwards, other overgods entered one by one as well. They were all dejected and filled with regret. These people were the experts who took part in the fight for the flying sword. They had all returned now. Many of them were speckled with blood and sickly pale. They were injured. Jianchen became gloomy when he saw this. He secretly sighed. He knew that he was probably done for. Just when he thought of that, his pupils became completely red. His last shred of consciousness had vanished, and he had lost his mind completely now. However, as he was simply too heavily injured, his head fell the moment he lost his mind, and he fell unconscious. Xinjian had also fallen unconscious beside him. The force from striking the burly man with the linear lightning release had deepened his wounds as well. If it were not for the fact that both of them had reached godhood, just the force from the collision would have been enough to reduce them to mincemeat. The return of the other overgods made the expressions Gohan Shui, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell change. The three of them did not hesitate. They immediately fled towards the entrance. Without a single doubt, Jianchen had become everyone's enemies by assisting Fairy Haoyu to pass through the power of laws and approach God King Duanmu's remains. They had become his accomplices, so remaining here would not help them at all. Don't let them escape. Stop them. An early overgod called out as soon as the three overgods fled. His eyes were filled with intense hatred. Gohan Shui, Bing Lu, and Feng Buell fled extremely quickly, shooting towards the entrance with lightning speed. Along the way, Gohan Shui and Feng Buell tried to grab Jianchen and Xinjian, so that they could take them away with them. However, the two overgods that Xinjian fought before stopped Feng Buell and Gohan Shui. At the same time, the burly man who had been knocked onto his bottom looked over coldly. The man was a mid-overgod. Gohan Shui and Feng Buell's hearts immediately jumped when he looked over. They could not afford to bother with Jianchen and Xinjian anymore. They immediately charged off without any hesitation. The overgods who fought against Xinjian and Jianchen immediately pursued them. At the same time, they called out for the other overgods to stop the three. However, the overgods who had come in later had no idea what was going on. Coupled with the fact that the people yelling at them were only early overgods, they did not move. In the end, the three of them escaped successfully. God damn it. Why did you let them escape? They're accomplices. They helped the soul pass through the power of laws. The soul has probably already laid her hands on God King Duanmu's items now. An early overgod who fought against Xinjian said regretfully. What did you say? Someone passed through the layer of power and approached God King Duanmu's remains? The expressions of all the overgods who had just returned changed when they heard that. They all cried out as they glared at the person who had just spoken. Soon afterwards, the early overgods explained the recent events. Every single one of the overgods that had just returned paled after hearing the story as they glared at the unconscious Jianchen and Xinjian with killing intent. Chapter 1759. Rescue. Since that soul is with Jianchen, we can't let Jianchen go, a late overgod growled. Killing intent surged in his eyes, creating a chilling sight. Yeah, we can't let Jianchen go. Jianchen actually decided to work with his companion to steal God King Duanmu's possessions while we were away. We can't let him go so easily. The surrounding overgods all spoke righteously. Every single one of them was very indignant. It was fine that they had failed to obtain God King Duanmu's flying sword, but how could they accept that someone else had taken away all of God King Duanmu's other possessions as well? The late overgod, Yang Kai, stood in the group with the other overgods from the royal city of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. However, they all remained silent about what Jianchen was going through. At this moment, a black-robed old man walked out from the group. He stared at Jianchen coldly and said, "I know a soul extraction technique, so I'll extract Jianchen's soul and leave it for all of you to deal with." With that, he directly made his way towards Jianchen. The black-robed man was the ancestor of the Mo family from the divine kingdom of Qingyang. He was a mid-overgod. No one stopped the ancestor of the Mo family. They just watched on. Jianchen had stolen the fortune that belonged to them, so they were naturally filled with hatred towards him. They were tempted to kill Jianchen then and there. The ancestor of the Mo family arrived before Jianchen. He directly extended his hand towards Jianchen and grabbed him. However, when his hand touched Jianchen's damaged armor, his eyes narrowed by an undetectable amount. A god artifact. This armor is actually a god artifact. The ancestor of the Mo family was greatly shocked as his heart churned. God artifacts were treasures that surpassed saint artifacts. They were extremely precious and rare. Even a supreme god king like Duanmu could not possess one. Under ordinary circumstances, only chaotic primes could own a god artifact. There were extremely few infinite primes who did own one. Even most infinite primes in the saints' world used treasures that were either half-god artifacts or supreme quality saint artifacts. Any single god artifact was an item that infinite primes dreamed of. There were just too many records that detailed god artifacts in the saints' world, so even though the ancestor of the Mo family had never seen a god artifact before, he knew a lot about them with his strength at mid-overgod. As a result, he immediately recognized the grade of the armor when he touched it. However, the ancestor of the Mo family showed none of his current feelings on his face. He examined the damaged armor like it was nothing special and said indifferently, "I never thought that Jianchen would actually have an 8th grade saint artifact on him. It's just a pity that it's too heavily damaged, but the materials that went into creating it are worth a little." As he said that, the ancestor of the Mo family took the armor off Jianchen steadily and stowed it away in his space ring. However, he was nowhere near as calm as he appeared on the surface. Instead, he was extraordinarily excited. He just hid his excitement deeply. Although the god artifact was damaged, it was still a god artifact after all. It was worth nothing to primordial realm experts, but it was a supreme treasure to any overgod. I'm rich. I never thought I'd find a god artifact. This is a god artifact. A god artifact. The ancestor of the Mo clan was completely overjoyed, but he did not dare to show any of it at all. He extended his hands like nothing had happened and started to change between his seals. He had started to cast a secret technique to extract Jianchen's soul. Ha 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 ha, Jianchen has caught this young master's eye. None of you can harm him, or I'll have to be rude. At this moment, a voice rang out from behind everyone. A white-robed, handsome, and elegant young man walked into the stone hut. He smiled impudently as he held a fan. He made his way past all the overgods leisurely, directly making his way towards Jianchen. A burly man followed behind the young man closely, like a loyal guard. The appearance of the young man immediately made the expressions of all the overgods change. They had seen the young man and burly man from afar when they worked on smashing through the entrance to God King Duanmu's dwelling from the outside. They knew that the young man had a large background, and he was probably from some powerful clan or organization. As a result, they had turned a blind eye to his actions, ignoring them. The ancestor of the Mo family stopped. He turned towards the young man, and his face sank slightly. "No, Jianchen has taken away something that belongs to us. You're dreaming if you want us to hand him over. It's absolutely impossible unless Jianchen gets his companion to hand over everything she has obtained." A late overgod stood forwards and said firmly. Even though the young man came from quite the background, the matter was connected to their interests. It had even related to whether they could become god kings or not. As a result, they stood forwards to object even though they feared the organization behind the young man slightly. Not to mention that there were several dozen overgods gathered here. They represented the surrounding divine kingdoms, and every single one of them wanted God King Duanmu's possessions, so they would naturally stand together. Haha, it's not up to you to decide that. I want to take Jianchen away right now. If there are any of you who object, you really should stop me. The young man giggled as he played around with his fan. He was cocky, completely looking down on the overgods. He directly arrived before Jianchen and glanced at the unconscious Shenjian. He took out a storage treasure that was like a divine haul, and put Shenjian away before lifting up Jianchen with his arms. He made his way towards the entrance, completely ignoring the murderous gazes of the surrounding overgods. Stop, we won't let Jianchen go. You won't be leaving here today. The late overgod who had spoken before stood in front of the young man, and said with a sunken face, "Yeah, we're not letting you take Jianchen. You're not going to be leaving today. Hand over Jianchen." Several other overgods stood forwards after the late overgod objected. They blocked the young man's path together as cold lights flickered in their eyes. "How dare you?" The burly man behind the young man bellowed out at this moment, and directly waved his hand towards the overgods. Immediately, a terrifying gale came whistling directly towards the overgods. The gale did not give off any pressure or presence at all, but the overgods were completely unable to resist when it approached them. They were swept far away like leaves. Chapter 1760. Tong Tian. The overgods were unable to put up a fight at all before the gale. Even the late overgod was as insignificant as an ant before it. No matter how they struggled, no matter how they resisted, it was all futile. In the end, the gale directly pushed them out of the space, and the overgods disappeared before all their eyes. Immediately, silence descended. The eyes of all the other overgods widened as they stared at the man behind the young man with a fan in shock. Their hearts churned. Even the ancestor of the Mo family who had taken the damaged god artifact from Jianchen became stunned. He was frightened, and he was secretly relieved that he was not the one who had stood forward to stop the young man. The overgods had been blown away from just a flick of the hand. There was even a late overgod among them. That was simply too terrifying. God King, he must be a God King. Only before God Kings are late overgods so puny. Even several overgods cannot resist a simple wave of his hand. Probably even the person ranked first on the overgod's plaque can't achieve that. He's a God King. He's a God King for sure. Heavens, he actually has the protection of a God King. Just how terrifying is that young man's background? Everyone's gazes towards the young man, and the burly man underwent an overwhelming change. Before they only feared the young man slightly, but now they felt dread. It was a sense of dread that they had never experienced before. The young man kept walking, directly making his way out with the injured Jianchen. He did not become surprised or startled by how Uncle Qin had blown away several overgods with a flick of his hand, as if he had been expecting that. "I'm going to be leaving, everyone. If you still want Jianchen, you must come quickly, seniors." The young man smiled cheekily as he glanced past everyone's faces slowly. None of the overgods dared to utter a single word. Instead, they quickly formed a path as the young man advanced, unwilling to stop him at all. They did not dare to show any displeasure on their faces, as well as they were afraid of making the young man unhappy. Naturally, the young man left easily with Jianchen. Even though the overgods objected to this, they could do nothing about it. The soul still hasn't come out. Everyone guard here. Once the soul comes out, immediately destroy her. She won't be able to take away anything like that anyway. An early overgod said suddenly after the young man's departure. The eyes of the overgods in the surroundings immediately lit up. They watched over the place as they attacked the power of laws together to waste it away faster. However, not everyone stayed. A few of the injured overgods knew that they probably would not benefit if they stayed, so they left without a second thought. The ancestor of the Mo family did not remain either. He left the dwelling. He had already obtained a damaged god artifact, and was satisfied with what he had gained. He no longer wanted to take part in the upcoming fight. At this moment, Fairy Haoyu's illusionary body hovered above God King Duanmu's remains within the region protected by the power of laws. There was an incomplete golden core of laws in God King Duanmu's head. Strands of energy radiated from it, pouring endlessly towards Fairy Haoyu's soul like small streams, allowing her soul to grow at a terrifying pace. There was still some of the God King's former power left in his remains that had not completely dispersed after so many years. Fairy Haoyu was devouring it rapidly. A space ring hovered in the air as well. The space ring was the one on God King Duanmu's finger. At this moment, meter cubes of divine crystals hovered out as the energy within turned into a rapid stream that was all absorbed by Fairy Haoyu. The divine crystals were all pure and without any contaminants. To no surprise, they were all of the supreme grade, making them even more valuable than high-grade divine crystals. Fairy Haoyu was using the remaining possessions of God King Duanmu to recover her strength and body. Jianchen gradually regained consciousness after some time. When he opened his eyes, all he saw was a deep, blue sky and white clouds. You actually woke up so soon. I thought it'll take you a day or two at the very least, but I never thought you'd wake up in just 4 hours. A surprised voice rang out from beside him as Jianchen was still in a daze. He heard it clearly. Jianchen looked over and found a young man in white robes sitting nearby with one leg atop the other. He smiled impudently as he stared at Jianchen with interest. Near the young man stood a burly man with his back towards Jianchen. He was seated on the floor. Jianchen quickly observed his surroundings and found that he was among a mountain range. The fierce gale in the surroundings buffeted his hair and clothes. "What is this place? And who are you?" Jianchen asked as he tried to move. He tried to stand up, but tremendous pain filled his body, causing him to furrow his brows. He was grievously injured. He had not recovered, so any movement would affect his wounds. The young man sank into his thoughts. He looked around and said with uncertainty, This is the divine kingdom of 9 stars, I think. I can't really remember. As for who I am," the young man suddenly smiled resplendently. He slowly stood up and arrived before Jianchen while fluttering his fan. He sat down beside Jianchen and smiled. "I am your savior. If I had not stepped in and saved your life, your soul would have been extracted by that Sai, I forgot his name, but that overgod from some Mo family in the divine kingdom of Qingyang. You definitely would have suffered a fate worse than death. Thank you for saving my life, sir. I will never forget your kindness," Jianchen said to the young man. However, he firmly remembered the Mo family of the divine kingdom of Qingyang. Jianchen really could not accept it if he had really tried to extract his soul and make him suffer a fate even worse than death. "My name is not sir." "Jianchen, listen up. My name is Tong Tian. The character Tong from Tong Tian, and the character Tian from Tong Tian. What do you think about it? Isn't it awesome?" The young man said proudly with his chest held high. He was pleased with himself. "It really is awesome. Thank you for saving me, young Master Tong Tian," said Jianchen. From their short conversation, he could tell that Tong Tian was probably from a large clan. He possessed a natural sense of pride and cockiness, but he did not seem to possess a bad character. Tong Tian chuckled and said, "Jianchen, you're extremely heavily injured, so you probably won't be able to recover in a short amount of time. I like you, so I'll help you out." As he said that, a black pill silently appeared in his hand. He glanced at the Uncle Qin behind him in guilt before quickly feeding Jianchen the pill. Uncle Qin's face twitched unnaturally. He turned towards Tong Tian and said with a darkened face, "Young master, how did you steal Elder Gu's 9 refined life-giving pill?" Chapter 1761. The Empyrean Demon Cult. 1. Although Uncle Qin had his back towards them as he rested, his cultivation was remarkable. Even with his eyes closed, Tong Tian was unable to hide his actions from the former. Tong Tian was surprised inside, and he became even more guilt-ridden. However, he showed none of it on his face and remained composed. He fluttered his fan. "Uncle Qin, you're mistaken. It's not like Elder Gu is the only one who can refine the 9 refined life-giving pill. There are plenty of grandmaster alchemists in the saints' world who can refine them. It's not like it's impossible for me to get some of them with my identity. And it's not like you don't know about the power of the formations around Elder Gu's pill room. How is it possible for me to get in there with my strength? Uncle Qin shook his head helplessly as he listened to Tong Tian's serious analysis. Tong Tian's words were completely true, but Uncle Qin understood that the young master before him probably really did use some method he did not know to infiltrate Elder Gu's pill room and steal quite a lot of pills. Jian Chen's expression became rather strange as he listened to the two of them talk. He had realized that the pill that Tong Tian had fed him was probably stolen from his own clan. However, Jian Chen's face changed slightly at this moment. In the next moment, a gentle light began to radiate from him. It enveloped him completely in a single instance. He seemed to have become a huge cocoon as a sweet, medicinal fragrance appeared. Just a single breath of it filled him with an extremely great feeling as if the fragrance had cleansed all the impurities within his body. Jian Chen's wounds actually healed at an unbelievable rate within the white light. He healed so quickly that even Jian Chen's expression changed, becoming greatly shocked. In under a minute, the white light around Jian Chen receded and revealed him. However, his complexion had returned to its previous state, and he had made a complete recovery as well. What a powerful pill. It's countless times more powerful than any healing pills I've ever seen. Jian Chen could not help but sigh in amazement. He understood just how severe his wounds were. Even if he used the chaotic body and radiant saint force, he would need a day at the very least to recover completely, and that was already an astonishing speed. However, the 9 refined life-giving pill had used less than a minute to heal him completely. Jian Chen rarely consumed pills when he was injured in the past, as the effects of pills would basically be negligible. They would be nowhere near as quick as his chaotic body. However, the 9 refined life-giving pill was more than 100 times more powerful than his chaotic body. Tong Tian said rather proudly when he heard Jian Chen's praise. Of course. Why don't you have a look at what the pill is? It's a 9 refined life-giving pill. I expended a tremendous amount of effort to get my hands on them, and even with that, I only managed to get 3. If it were not for the fact that I took a liking to you when I first saw you, I would have never given you it. Jian Chen stood up and thanked Tong Tian again. Then he said, Young Master Tong Tian, my friend is still in God King Duanmu's dwelling. She is in constant danger, so I must hurry back immediately. Please forgive my rudeness. Jian Chen, there are several dozen overgods in the dwelling. Are you sure that you can save your friend? Tong Tian said steadily. Jian Chen became rather stern. If I have enough time, I do have some confidence in achieving that. Jian Chen thought of the small high-grade divine crystal mine in the Dong'an province. With his current strength, he could hold his ground against all the powerful clans in the Dong'an province. It would be extremely easy for him to take over the mine. As long as he used the mine to reach the 10th layer of the chaotic body, his battle prowess would definitely skyrocket. He was confident that he could deal with mid-overgods with the power of his chaotic body. Even if he could not defeat late overgods, he could hold his ground against them. Qinzhen walked over and looked at Jian Chen in admiration. He said, You should be talking about that soul, right? You don't have to worry about that. Your friend is far more complicated than she seems. She's a peak expert that has already reached infinite prime. She's currently using Duanmu's possessions to recover, so those overgods won't be able to threaten her. Jian Chen finally let out a breath of relief when he heard that. However, he was shocked when he learned about Fairy Hao Yu's strength. She was actually an infinite prime. However, Jian Chen seemed to notice something soon afterwards. He stared at Qinzhen in shock. Qinzhen could actually tell Fairy Hao Yu's past strength? And he knew that she was using God King Duanmu's possessions to recover? Could he see through the layer of power that protected God King Duanmu's remains? Jian Chen, since your friend is safe, there's no need for you to leave in such a hurry. Come drink with me, laughed Tong Tian. With a wave of his hand, a table full of delicacies appeared again, and he said proudly, I carry many delicacies with me at all times. It's enough for us to feast on for a few hundred years. These are all precious in the world. Jian Chen, sit, let's talk and eat. Jian Chen hesitated slightly when he saw the table full of dishes. He did not want to decline, so he just sat down and began talking with Tong Tian. Brother Jianchen, that armor you wore seems to have been taken away by the overgod from that Mo clan or something. Don't you plan on retrieving it? Tong Tian asked. He sat with one leg crossed over the other like a fool. A cold light flickered through Jianchen's eyes and he said, My armor is not so easy to take away. I will personally pay a visit to the Mo family of the divine kingdom of Qingyang before long. The Mo family is nothing good. I find them displeasing to the eye as well. When you visit the Mo family, please don't forget to call me. I'll cover you, Tong Tian said confidently. Even though he was only a mid-god, he completely looked down on the Mo family. Thank you, brother Tong Tian, but I should be enough to deal with the Mo family. Jianchen clasped his hands in response. Then he thought of something and asked, Brother Tong Tian, may I ask who obtained God King Duanmu's flying sword in the end? Jianchen stared at Tong Tian in much interest. Now that he had lost the flying snow sword, he was in search of a sword of higher quality. That golden flying sword seems to have been taken away by an old man who also comprehended the laws of the sword. Though I have to say that old man really is brave. He's actually willing to become enemies with the Empyrean demon cult. There are not many organizations who are willing to provoke them even with the entire cloud plane in perspective. That old man really is wet behind the ears. He has no idea about the power that the Empyrean demon cult possesses. Tong Tian became rather stern when he mentioned the Empyrean demon cult. The Empyrean demon cult? Jianchen was slightly surprised. This was the second time he had heard about the Empyrean demon cult, so he could not help but become curiously. He asked, Brother Tong Tian, can you tell me about the Empyrean demon cult? Chapter 1762, The Empyrean Demon Cult, 2. Tong Tian stopped appearing impudent and became stern. His current expression made him seem like a completely different person from before. He said solemnly, I don't know a lot about the Empyrean demon cult either. I only know that they were founded in the recent million years. When they were first founded, they were extremely weak, but the speed at which they developed was extremely shocking. In just 1 million years, they became a famed organization even with the entire cloud plane in perspective. Very few people are bold enough to provoke them, and even my clan fears them slightly. As long as we don't get into too great of a conflict of interest, we're unwilling to offend them. The Empyrean demon cult is actually so powerful. Doesn't that mean Ling Hogong, who obtained the flying sword from God King Duanmu, is in big trouble? Jianchen frowned as he secretly felt worried for Ling Hogong. All right, Brother Tong Tian, may I ask what strength the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan, possesses? As well as the strength of the Empyrean demon cult's leader? Jianchen asked. I only know that all the vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult are at the primordial realm. I don't know any more than that, but Uncle Qin knows more than me. Tong Tian looked towards Qinzheng. Qinzheng did not ignore Jianchen's question. After a moment of silence, he said, The Empyrean demon cult on the cloud plane is only one of the many branches. There are branches of the Empyrean demon cult on other planes, and even a few on the larger planets. I must say that the person who founded the cult is impressive. He possesses extremely great ability. In just 1 million years, against pressure and threats from everywhere, he managed to develop the Empyrean demon cult to its current size. Qinzheng paused there. On the other hand, Jianchen paid full attention to his words, unwilling to miss a single word. After all, this was a rare chance for him to understand the Empyrean demon cult. It was even possible that it would be very difficult for him to buy the information that he could learn from Qinzheng, because it might be information that could only be obtained at a similar strength. Qinzheng continued, On the cloud plane, the Empyrean demon cult has a total of 3 vice leaders. They're all infinity primes. The Huayan you speak of is an early infinity prime, just like the other 2. As for the leader, since the Empyrean demon cult was founded, no one has ever heard of the existence of a leader, as if there is no leader in the Empyrean demon cult. What? The Empyrean demon cult has no leader? Only vice leaders? Jianchen was astonished. He found it to be extremely surprising. I don't know whether the Empyrean demon cult has a leader or not, but no one has ever heard of one across all these years. There's only a great elder. The great elder is the person who's actually in control of the Empyrean demon cult as well, Qin Zheng said rather grimly. He became extremely stern when he mentioned the great elder as deep fear filled his eyes. A great elder? Jianchen murmured. Without even thinking anymore, he understood that the great elder was a peak expert. Although the branch on the cloud plane has 3 infinite primes and is quite strong, they've never garnered the attention of the few powerful organizations on the cloud plane. What the organizations really fear is the mysterious great elder behind the Empyrean demon cult. It is exactly because of his existence that the powerful organizations fear the Empyrean demon cult slightly, and are unwilling to provoke them over trivial matters. Uncle Qin, is the great elder really that powerful? To the point where he supports the entire organization by himself, making so many powerful organizations fear him. This time, even Tong Tian was shocked. He clearly did not know about this. Qin Zheng nodded. The great elder is indeed extremely powerful. The reason why the Empyrean demon cult is ranked as one of the most powerful organizations on the cloud plane is all because of the great elder. It's just that the great elder is extremely mysterious. Very few people have seen him personally. It's said that ever since the cult was founded, the great elder has only stepped in a total of 3 times. The first time was at the U-plane. The Empyrean demon cult had offended a powerful organization on the U-plane back then, and the organization had launched devastating attacks towards them, drawing in the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult. The great elder directly killed his way into the organization's sect. In the end, neither of their 2 chaotic primes managed to escape. They were killed off completely. From then on, the organization vanished from the U-plane. The second time was on planet Tianming of the 81 greater planets. The planet lord had destroyed the branch of the Empyrean demon cult on the planet, so the great elder and the planet lord engaged in a great fight in outer space. In the end, the great elder killed the planet lord. Even Qin Zheng was no longer able to remain composed when he reached there. His expression changed, and he sighed gently. The planet lord was a grand prime, yet he actually died at the hands of the great elder. The expressions of both Jianchen and Tong Tian changed when they heard that. The great elder of the Empyrean demon cult was just too terrifying. Even grand primes had died at his hands. Grand primes were experts who had arrived at the apex of the saint's world, approaching the end of cultivation. They were equivalent to immortal exalts in the immortal's world. The Anata Grand Prime, Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, and the old master of the sword spirits had reached that level. What about the third time? Tong Tian asked eagerly. Qin Zheng's emotions became mixed. He said, the third time happened 100,000 years ago. The great elder of the Empyrean demon cult began fighting a Hall elder of the God clan from the Godswirl plane. The Hall elder was also a Grand Prime. He was an early Grand Prime, but he comprehended the laws of destruction. He was so powerful that even the planet lord of planet Tianming was not his opponent. Qin Zheng did not continue after reaching there. What was the outcome? Did the Hall elder of the God clan win? Or was it the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult? Jianchen asked. He cared for the answer to this very much, as the God clan on the Godswirl plane was Taita's clan. There was no outcome to this battle. It ended as an unsettled matter, replied Qin Zheng. Jianchen and Tong Tian looked at each other. It had ended as an unsettled matter. Did that not mean that the Hall elder was unable to deal with the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult? It is exactly because the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult has fought 3 times that the status of the Empyrean demon cult has been consolidated in the saint's world. So even on the cloud plane, there are no large organizations who would want to provoke them easily. Even if the Empyrean demon cult goes a little overboard on the cloud plane, the powerful organizations will just turn a blind eye to them, as long as they don't get in their way. Chapter 1763. Invitation. Jianchen fell silent. When he first heard about the Empyrean demon cult in the dwelling, he had already realized that they were an extremely powerful organization. However, He had never imagined them to actually be so powerful. In particular, the mysterious Great Elder who founded the cult single-handedly was so powerful that Jianchen felt extremely shocked. He had even claimed the life of a Grand Prime. Jianchen could only look up to such a powerful existence right now. Jianchen began to worry for Ling Hogong even more. For God King Duanmu's flying sword, Ling Hogong had offended such a powerful organization. The Empyrean demon cult was so powerful that even if Ling Hogong became as powerful as God King Duanmu when he was still alive, he would not be able to fend them off at all. Although they were nothing like close friends, Ling Hogong's infatuation with the sword and moral character had garnered Jianchen's admiration. He naturally did not want Ling Hogong to be murdered by the Empyrean demon cult. Qinzheng stared at Jianchen and seemed to be able to tell what Jianchen was worrying about with a single glance. He said, "You don't have to worry too much. Ling Hogong has only offended one of the 3 vice leaders, Huayan, while there are 3 vice leaders in the branch on the Cloud Province. Huayan alone does not represent the entire Empyrean demon cult on the Cloud Plane. There's even less reason for you to worry about the mysterious Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult. You'll only force him out if you destroy the entire Empyrean demon cult branch on the Cloud Plane. As a Great Elder, he naturally will not interfere with personal matters. Even without the terrifyingly powerful Great Elder, just the vice leader Huayan is an undefeatable existence to Ling Hogong." Jianchen sighed gently. He could only pray for Ling Hogong right now. There was nothing else he could do. Tong Tian swiveled his eyes when he heard that. He said to Jianchen, "Jianchen, if you really want to protect that old man who obtained God King Duanmu's sword, I do have an idea." "What's the idea?" Even though Jianchen knew that Tong Tian would be up to no good from his smile, he still could not help but ask. Tong Tian sniggered and said, "It's very simple, and that's for you to join our Tong family. With your talent, the clan will definitely nurture you with everything they have once you join. You'll also obtain an extremely great status in the clan. As long as you join our Tong family, protecting your friend is a piece of cake." Qinzheng also looked towards Jianchen as he waited for the latter's reply. There was a sliver of eagerness in his nonchalant gaze. He felt extremely shocked by Jianchen's talent, and he had completely witnessed Jianchen's moral character. He was extremely content with him, so he naturally hoped that Jianchen could join their Tong family very much. A gleam of light flashed through Jianchen's eyes. He did not answer the question and instead asked, "Isn't your Tong family afraid of the Empyrean demon cult?" Naturally, our Tong family fears the Empyrean demon cult slightly, but what we fear are not the vice leaders but the Great Elder behind the entire cult. This time, the speaker was Qinzheng, who stood to one side with his arms crossed. Qinzheng looked at Jianchen with shining eyes. He swore solemnly, "Jianchen, if you join our clan, we will support you with everything we have. We'll give you various precious pills, cultivation methods, battle skills, and even precious heavenly resources. We will assist you with your growth. Even your friend who has offended the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult can be protected by our clan." Jianchen sank into his thoughts. Without a single doubt, Tong Tian's Tong family was one of the most powerful clans in the entire Cloud Plane. They did not even worry about the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, who was an infinite prime. If he really did receive the full support of such a clan, breaking through with the chaotic body would become an extremely easy matter. This was because even in the immortals world, all the ordinary chaotic bodies that reached major achievement had the support of large sects and clans, without a single exception. Very few people were able to progress the chaotic body to a powerful level alone. However, if he joined the Tong family, he would come across primordial realm experts. If he exposed the secret of the twin swords before them, it would be a devastating disaster. No one would be able to protect him. Jianchen made up his mind very quickly after a moment of thought. He said to Qinzheng and Tong Tian apologetically, "Thank you for your kind intentions, but I am used to moving freely and not being tied down. As a result, I don't plan on joining any organization for now. Moreover, the Saints' world is so large. I want to go see other places, so I won't be staying on the Cloud Plane for too long." Jianchen's declination disappointed Qinzheng and Tong Tian, but they recovered very soon. Tong Tian chuckled aloud and said without minding it, It's no problem at all. Since Brother Jianchen likes to move freely, I naturally won't trouble Brother Jianchen. Brother Jianchen, let's drink some more. It doesn't matter if you want to join our Tong family or not. I'm making you my friend. Tong Tian raised his cup and said generously. Jianchen also raised his cup. He said, if I become accomplished in cultivation in the future, feel free to ask me if there is anywhere I can be of use so that I can return the kindness you've shown today. As he said that, Jianchen and Tong Tian clinked glasses and downed all the contents. Tong Tian tossed a token to Jianchen and said, that's a token for identification from me. Brother Jianchen, if you ever come across any problems you can't handle, just bring the token to the Tong family and come to look for me. As long as you don't provoke any primordial realm experts, I can settle any problems for you. At the same time, Tong Tian took out Xinjian. Xinjian was still unconscious right now. His injuries were very heavy. Jianchen immediately put Xinjian away in the Bright Moon Divine Hall and fed him some healing pills. Tong Tian, I'd like to see where you run. You can't run from me. Even if you leave the cloud plane, I can still find you. At this moment, a furious, feminine voice rang out from afar. A streak of red light flew over with lightning speed. From afar, it seemed like a comet. Tong Tian's hand immediately trembled when he heard that, and he spilled some alcohol from his cup. He became flustered as if he had encountered an extremely terrifying situation. He said how did she get here? Didn't I end the engagement with her? Just how much does she hate me to chase me until I'm dead? Let's go. Let's go quick, Uncle Qin. Let's leave. We can't let her catch up. I can't defeat her right now. At that moment, Tong Tian had lost all his normal cockiness and confidence. A sliver of dread appeared as he stared at the red figure that flew over hurriedly. Seeing how frightened Tong Tian had become, Qin Jun revealed a strange expression as well. He shook his head helplessly. He gazed at the approaching figure in the distance. With a wave of his hand, he vanished with Tong Tian. They seemed to have teleported. Brother Jianchen, I shall be leaving first. Let's meet some other time. As they left, Tong Tian's voice rang out in Jianchen's head. He left in a great hurry, so he had even left behind the table of delicacies. Tong Tian, you bastard, stop. You can't run from me. I'll catch you no matter where you run off to. I'll skin you alive and carve you up when I catch you. The woman roared angrily from behind. She was utterly furious. Chapter 1764. The lady in red Jianchen could not help but shake his head when he saw how Tong Tian had basically fled in terror. He smiled bitterly. The feeling that Tong Tian gave him was that he seemed to fear nothing, yet he seemed to have encountered his crux just now. The lady hurrying over had actually frightened him to the point where he fled without even taking his delicacies with him. And he had also left behind the valuable table made from precious materials. Jianchen could not help but look at the lady who shot over. He felt rather curious about her. Just what kind of person was she to scare Tong Tian away like that? The lady burned with fire under Jianchen's gaze. She descended towards Jianchen's location as she gave off a terrifying heat. She did not land and looked down on him from above instead. She was an alluring beauty who only seemed to be in her 20s. Cold light flickered in her perfect eyes, while her longer face seemed like a painstakingly crafted sculpture. She possessed a natural type of beauty, where it was impossible to find any flaws. Her cherry lips were bright red. She was the type that people would slaver over and approach unconsciously. Without a single doubt, she was an alluring beauty. Her fire-red hair fluttered in the wind as she stood in the sky, while the fitting, red robes sculpted out a curvy figure. She also wore a pair of red shoes. As the fire burned around her, she seemed like a goddess of fire. Who are you? The lady did not pursue Tong Tian. Instead, she asked Jianchen coldly in the face while her beautiful face darkened. Jianchen stood on the ground. He did not mind the lady's tone at all. He smiled indifferently and said, I'm Jianchen, just a person not worth mentioning. May I ask for your name? The lady's face remained just as cold as before. She glared at Jianchen and said, You have no right to learn who I am. I saw you with that bastard Tong Tian earlier. Tell me honestly, How are you related to him? I will never spare you if you hide even the slightest of details. Jian Chen's face remained the same as before. From Tong Tian's previous words, he already understood that the lady in red was probably engaged to Tong Tian, except Tong Tian broke off the engagement himself, which was why the lady had come hunting for him. Young Master Tong Tian saved my life. He's a good friend of mine, replied Jian Chen. However, the lady's gaze turned cold when she heard that Jian Chen was a good friend of Tong Tian. She bellowed out, "Anyone who can become a good friend of that bastard is nothing good." With that, the lady launched a palm strike towards Jian Chen. As she struck out, the flames around her immediately surged, condensing into a huge palm of fire that squashed towards Jian Chen. Jian Chen frowned. The lady in red was very unreasonable. She was just flat out rude. With a thought, the laws of the sword in the surroundings immediately condensed into a giant sword chi that shot towards the palm of fire. The lady's palm of fire immediately dispersed with a boom, while Jian Chen's sword chi remained. It shone with dazzling white light. An overgod. The lady frowned as she stared at Jian Chen's sword chi. "Miss, haven't you gone overboard?" Jian Chen said calmly. The lady in red was a late god, so she really was stronger than Tong Tian. Jian Chen would have been better off without saying that. The lady immediately became furious again, and she cried out, "So what if I've gone overboard? Do you really think I fear you just because you're an overgod?" With that, the flames around the lady suddenly disappeared. The next moment, arcs of electricity revolved around her, and a sword that sparked with blue electricity appeared in her hand. Laws of lightning. Jian Chen was surprised. The laws of lightning were also known to be one of the laws with the greatest offense, together with the laws of the sword, the laws of destruction, and so on. Aside from the laws of fire, the lady in red had actually comprehended the laws of lightning as well. At this moment, the lady swung her sword as she charged towards Jian Chen. After using the laws of lightning, she clearly moved much faster. Her sword sparked as she sent bolts of lightning in Jian Chen's direction. Jian Chen condensed a strand of sword chi on his finger as he engaged in a battle with the lady. He moved calmly, but he became more and more surprised inside. He discovered that even though the lady was only a late god, there were barely any other late gods that would be her opponent. If his laws of the sword had not reached sword spirit, he probably would not have been the lady's opponent. Thunder. At this moment, the lady called out. She pointed her sword towards the sky as she gave off a strange presence, fusing with the world. The next moment, a bolt of lightning appeared from nothing, coupled with a thunderous boom. It struck the lady's sparking sword with great accuracy, immediately causing it to shine with dazzling light. It flickered constantly. Then she pointed the sword at Jian Chen. The lightning was redirected towards Jian Chen immediately. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. He extended his finger calmly, and he sent out a powerful strand of sword chi to collide with the lightning. The clash immediately produced resplendent sparks. The sword chi and lightning actually dispersed together, with none of them gaining the upper hand. On the other hand, the mountain that Jian Chen stood on collapsed silently. What strength! Jian Chen could not help but sigh in amazement. The lady really was just too powerful. She was clearly only a late god. Yet her battle prowess had already surpassed the limits of late god. Thunderfire strike. The lady called out. This time, the laws of fire and lightning revolved around her. They formed two chains that shot towards Jian Chen as they revolved around each other. Jian Chen became slightly stern. He felt like he was facing an overgod from her attack. The lady's thunderfire strike neared the might of an early overgod. Jian Chen formed a seal, and a golden strand of sword chi condensed. It shot off as a golden streak of light, colliding with the chains formed from the laws of lightning and fire. Boom! The two chains dispersed at the same time, while Jian Chen's golden sword chi continued onwards just like before. It shot towards the lady, except it was slightly dimmer than before. The golden sword chi simply moved too quickly. It had basically arrived before the lady in a single moment after smashing through her chains. The woman's expression remained the same. Suddenly, a fire-red armor appeared, enveloping her entire body. The sword chi struck the armor and knocked the lady far away. Her face paled slightly, But she did not become injured at all. Chapter 1765. Hearing about the cult again. Impressive armor. Jianchen could not help but praise as he stared at the lady's armor. He could tell with a single glance that the armor was a defensive treasure of a very high grade. Even the overgods who had entered God King Duanmu's dwelling did not possess something like that. The lady was skilled in 2 laws, and her battle prowess was so powerful. She was definitely a prodigy. Coupled with how she was bold enough to hunt down Tong Tian in such a fashion, everything pointed to the fact that she had quite the background. Jianchen had learnt long ago that in both the saints' world and the immortals' world, a few large sects or clans had some prodigies. Any person who could become a prodigy possessed extraordinary talent. Coupled with the full support of their clan or sect, every single prodigy would basically possess extremely great battle prowess. There would barely be anyone who was their opponent at a similar cultivation level, allowing them to hold the title of being invincible among the same level. Many prodigies even possessed the power to challenge those stronger than them. Killing regular experts at a higher cultivation level was not impossible for them. To no surprise, the lady in red was a prodigy. She was clearly only a late god, yet she possessed the battle prowess of an early overgod to a certain degree. Even though it was just barely, it was still impressive enough. The lady in red's eyes burned with anger. She became even more furious when she heard Jianchen praise her armor, because this was a naked provocation in her eyes. She felt like he was telling her that she would have become heavily injured if it were not for the armor's protection. "I'll remember you. Let's just wait and see. Next time, no one will be able to save you," the lady said coldly. She knew that she was not Jianchen's opponent. She became enveloped in flames and left without even looking back. She gnashed her teeth. "Tong Tian, you bastard. Do you think you can avoid me just because you're with someone else? Humph, let alone the cloud plane. Even if you escape beyond here, I can still find you. I swear, once I catch you, I'll skin you alive." Jianchen watched the lady in red leave. He secretly shook his head. No wonder Tong Tian broke off the marriage on his own accord. The lady in red was an alluring beauty. However, her temper was horrible. Yet she just happened to be so powerful. Whoever married her would suffer misfortune. Afterwards, Jianchen rose up in the sky and left the place. After a period of flying, he found a city and spent some divine crystals to purchase a map. He found his location and immediately frowned. He was currently near the boundary of the Divine Kingdom of 9 Stars and Divine Kingdom of 3 Cauldrons. The Divine Kingdom of Pingtian was on the other side of the Divine Kingdom of 9 Stars. If he wanted to return, he basically had to cross the entire Divine Kingdom of 9 Stars. The Divine Kingdom of 9 Stars was extremely vast. Even if he traveled in a straight line, it would be several billion kilometers. Looks like just the travel time will be close to a month for me to get back to the Dong'an province. Tong Tian's Uncle Qin is just too terrifying. I was only unconscious for 6 hours. Yet he brought me here from God King Duanmu's dwelling. Jianchen smiled bitterly. He felt very helpless. The distance they had traveled in less than 4 hours would take him close to a month to cover. A streak of white light suddenly flashed through the skies in the Divine Kingdom of 9 Stars at an altitude of several tens of thousand meters. It was like a bolt of light, moving through the air with unbelievable speed. It crossed an entire region in a single moment, disappearing into the horizon. The bolt of lightning dimmed after a flash in the distance, revealing a young man in white robes. The surroundings of the young man glimmered with light. He used the speed from the lightning to cover distance quickly. The young man was Jianchen, who had to travel through the entire Divine Kingdom of 9 Stars. It's quite effective to travel using the linear lightning release. I can cover such a great distance in a single moment. If I keep at it, the amount of time I'll need to return to the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian will lessen by quite a lot. Jianchen murmured as he revealed some exhaustion. He could not keep using the linear lightning release, or he would not be able to endure the exhaustion. His journey through the Divine Kingdom of 9 Stars was not as smooth as he imagined it would be. Not only did he come across bandits that blocked the way, but he also had to fight powerful birds and beasts. It was very difficult to ensure a safe journey without strength at God. In particular, some birds and beasts possessed impressive intelligence despite being unable to assume a human form. They moved in groups, where even gods would flee in terror if they came across them. Probably only over-gods could cross an entire divine kingdom smoothly. At this moment, Jianchen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He gazed at the large group of people that had suddenly appeared in the sky in the distance. They could be as powerful as gods or as weak as Origin Realm cultivators. They were a dense group, enough to blot out the sun. From afar, they seemed like a huge, black cloud moving through the sky, hurrying towards the depths of the divine kingdom of 9 stars. That's several tens of million at the very least, or even over 100 million. Has something happened that has displaced them all? Just how many people are moving? Jianchen was curious. He immediately changed his direction and flew over. Brother, may I ask what has happened? Jianchen stopped a middle-aged male deity and asked. The middle-aged man was dejected and in horrible spirits. He raised his head and glanced at Jianchen before he ignored Jianchen, and directly continued on his way. Jianchen was surprised, but he did not mind too much. He glanced past the group and stopped amid God. He vaguely radiated with the pressure of sword spirit, and asked the same question. The early god's face immediately changed when he sensed the shocking pressure from Jianchen. He replied politely, Senior, we're all people of the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons. The 9th army of the Empyrean demon cult is attacking the divine kingdom right now. And wherever the 9th army moves through, all lives will be lost. The divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons can no longer hold their ground, and will be destroyed soon. We've all fled to the divine kingdom of 9 stars in hopes of avoiding this crisis. It's the Empyrean demon cult again. Jianchen frowned as he felt an ill omen. The Empyrean demon cult had already invaded the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons. They were extremely close to the divine kingdom of Pingtian now. However, Jianchen became doubtful soon afterwards. The Empyrean demon cult was such a powerful organization, so why would they attack the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons? He had heard of the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons. It was a divine kingdom on the same level as the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Their strongest experts were only god kings, so logically speaking, an organization controlled by a god king should not have caught the Empyrean demon cult's attention. Chapter 1766. Taking the mind by force. After a short moment of thought, Jianchen asked the god again. Do you know why the Empyrean demon cult is attacking the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons? Did the divine kingdom offend them? Deep hatred appeared in the god's eyes when the Empyrean demon cult was mentioned. He said, Does the Empyrean demon cult need any reason to destroy the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons? They're a demonic cult. It's not the first time that they're wiping out divine kingdoms, sects, and clans. Jianchen's face changed slightly when he asked, Does the Empyrean demon cult do these things often? The god gazed at Jianchen rather strangely and said, That's right. The Empyrean demon cult really does do things like that often. Don't you know, Senior? Jianchen became stern. He was basically certain that the Empyrean demon cult was not trying to destroy the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons because the divine kingdom had offended them, as this was just a common occurrence. What he was worried about right now was whether the Empyrean demon cult would continue towards the divine kingdom of 9 stars, or even the divine kingdom of Pingtian, after they destroyed the divine kingdom of 3 cauldrons. Although he did not care about these divine kingdoms, Jianchen had planned to gain a stable footing in the Dong'an province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. It was impossible for the people who had followed him up to the saint's world to always run around with him. He had to find a place to settle them down. Jianchen did not dare to waste any more time after learning about the Empyrean demon cult's movements. He immediately hurried off towards the Dong'an province of the divine kingdom of Pingtian at full speed. From time to time, he would use the linear lightning release. In just 7 days, Jianchen crossed the entire divine kingdom of 9 stars under his full speed, and returned to the divine kingdom of Pingtian. I'll need 3 more days at most to return to the Dong'an province. Jianchen gazed in the direction of the Dong'an province as he hovered in the sky. Afterwards, he used the linear lightning release and disappeared as a streak of light. However, he was unable to maintain the linear lightning release for very long at all. He could only keep moving at the terrifying speed for less than a split second, or he would have returned to the divine kingdom of Pingtian long ago. 2 days later, Jianchen finally returned to the Dong'an province. However, he did not make his way to God King Duanmu's dwelling. Instead, he flew towards the dark cloud mountains. He understood that with his current strength, he would be of no help even if he went to God King Duanmu's dwelling. The matter at hand was to increase his strength as quickly as possible. Once he reached the 10th layer of the chaotic body, he would be able to last a while even before late overgods with the toughness of the chaotic body. The powerful clans of the Dong'an province had taken over the dark cloud mountains. There were over a dozen of them in total. They had all sent people there to mine the high-grade divine crystals, and even the ancestors from their clans watched over the operation. At this moment, 2 old men sat on a flat mountaintop as they played chess and conversed. 2 young women stood beside them, pouring tea for them courteously. From how carefully they behaved, they seemed to be afraid of spilling even a drop of tea. The disturbance from God King Duanmu's dwelling has already lasted for several years. I really wonder when it'll end. A gray-robed old man sighed gently. Before the gray-robed old man, sat another old man in white robes. The white-robed old man played a move and gazed at the chessboard as he said leisurely, "It's said that a soul has already approached God King Duanmu's remains. The disturbance the dwelling caused is coming to an end. It'll end soon in my opinion." The dwelling appeared in our Dong'an province, but it's just a pity that no one in the Dong'an province was able to benefit from it. Those overgods took it all away. We gods don't even have the chance to take part or fight over anything, the gray-robed old man said regretfully. The white-robed old man chuckled. Being unable to take part is also good. Look at how many of the experts who took part died. The Wainer clan lost half of their gods, while the other clans of the Dong'an province lost a few gods as well. Even overgods died in the depths of the dwelling. They failed to obtain any treasure and lost their lives instead. In my opinion, it's just not worth it. I heard that people of the Mo clan and Ando clan entered the dwelling first. Do you think they managed to benefit? The gray-robed old man asked out of interest. The white-robed old man shook his head without any hesitation. He said firmly, "Do you think they survived? Those overgods aren't benevolent people." Fair enough. There's probably not a single member of the Mo clan and Ando clan that remains. The overgods would never let them go regardless of what they found. The gray-robed old man nodded. It made sense. The 2 old men were specially stationed here from the powerful clans of the Dong'an province. They served as a deterrence against any thieves, and they also acted as supervisors. As the 2 old men played chess leisurely and spoke about the situation of God King Duanmu's dwelling with interest, a white-robed young man appeared there silently. The young man did not give off any presence, making him seem just like an ordinary person. The 2 early gods had actually failed to sense his approach. Only when he arrived beside the chessboard did the 2 old men discover him suddenly. They became surprised. "Who are you?" The 2 old men leapt to their feet and stared at Jianchen cautiously. They were filled with shock. The young man definitely possessed strength much greater than theirs if he could approach them so silently. "Who I am is not important. What is important is that this mine belongs to me from now onwards," the young man said calmly. As expected, he was Jianchen. The expressions of the 2 old men changed when they heard that Jianchen wanted the mine. The gray-robed old man said coldly, "This mine belongs to the entire Dong'an province. Sir, do you plan on becoming enemies with the entire province?" "I've never planned on that, but I don't mind either if the entire Dong'an province wants to become my enemy. Moreover, the mine never belonged to the Dong'an province in the first place. It belonged to the Lu family. You only forcefully took it over from them," said Jianchen. He was helpless against the powerful clans of the Dong'an province when he first entered God King Duanmu's dwelling, so he could only watch as they took over the mine. However, did it really matter even if the entire Dong'an province became his enemy now? Chapter 1767. The 10th layer of the chaotic body 1. The hearts of the two old men immediately sank when they saw how Jianchen showed no fear when they mentioned the entire Dong'an province. They could sense that this was a horrible situation, especially when Jianchen described the Dong'an province like it was nothing. The two old men seemed to realize that the mind had probably drawn in an extremely powerful adversary. The faces of the two old men darkened. They looked at each other. Soon afterwards, a sliver of determination flashed through the eyes of the gray-robed old man. He sneered towards Jianchen. "Defeat the two of us first if you want to take the mine." As he said that, a black sword appeared in his hand. He wielded the sword and immediately sent out streaks of darkness. As the darkness expanded, it blotted out the sun, causing the world to descend into darkness. Jianchen was undeterred. He stood where he was, remaining as still as a mountain. He did not even become surprised, as if the darkness around him was nothing. Extending a finger, a strand of sword chi shot out with dazzling light. At the same time, a terrifying sword intent that was enough to cause the two early gods to pale permeated the surroundings. Boom! All the darkness in the surroundings immediately dispersed while the gray-robed old man vomited blood. He was blown away like a broken kite. He became haggard, no heavily injured. The white-robed old man's face changed at the sight of this. He immediately flew over to stop the gray-robed old man. However, when his hand came in contact with his back, the white-robed old man's face suddenly changed again. He only sensed an extremely powerful and sharp sword chi emerge suddenly, making his hand ache. His hand had been reduced to a bloody mess. The white-robed old man was astounded. He stared at Jianchen in utter shock. The young man before him was just too terrifying. Just the slight movement of a finger possessed such unbelievable force. No one in the Dong'an province could achieve that with just a single finger. This strength has completely exceeded late god. Is this young man an overgod? The white-robed old man realized in surprise. His heart immediately leapt in fright when he reached this conclusion. Without any hesitation, he fled with the gray-robed old man, and also sent a message to all the people in the mine to leave as quickly as possible. Gods were equivalent to the ancestors of powerful clans in the Dong'an province. No one doubted people like that. All the miners immediately fled as quickly as possible when they received the message. An overgod has come to take over this mine. Everyone run. Flee. An overgod wants to kill us. If we don't run, we'll die. We'll be stuck here for all of eternity if we're a little slow. Immediately, panic-stricken cries rang out everywhere. The miners had all paled in fright as they fled even faster for their lives. Jianchen Kami watched on from the top of the mountain. He did not stop them. Only when all the miners had fled did he reach the bottom of the mine gently. With a wave of his hand, the bright moon divine hall landed on the ground heavily with a thud. As the door to the divine hall slowly opened, Xinjian emerged wearing black robes. Xinjian had mostly healed up while Jianchen was making his way back to the divine kingdom of Pingtian from the divine kingdom of 9 stars. However, due to the heavy price he paid by consuming the firecloud pill, his complexion was still sickly pale. Clearly, he had not completely recovered. Jianchen could not help but praise the power of the 9 refined life-giving pill again when he saw how Xinjian still had not fully recovered. He had also consumed the firecloud pill, and was supposed to pay the same price. He was supposed to be sapped as well, but not only had he healed from his wounds after consuming Tong Tian's pill, he had even recovered all of his vitality. "Xinjian, are you fine?" Jianchen asked Xinjian in concern. Xinjian looked around nonchalantly and said, "Cultivate without worry. Break through in the shortest amount of time possible. Leave the problem of safety to me. However, once overgods appear personally, you'll have to deal with them yourself." Jianchen clasped his fist toward Xinjian. After putting the divine hall away, he directly made his way towards the very depths of the mine. Jianchen sat down in the depths of the mine and began to practice his cultivation method. The origin energy in the surroundings immediately surged over, forming wisps of mist that revolved around Jianchen. Jianchen seemed to become a bottomless hole, as he devoured the pure origin energy in the surroundings rapidly. As he absorbed the energy, the high-grade divine crystals hidden within the rock immediately dulled, being reduced to simple stone. Jianchen urgently needed to increase his strength. Even if it were simply too wasteful for him to cultivate using high-grade divine crystals, he had no other choice. Xinjian sat down on the top of a mountain outside. He observed the abnormal movements of energy in the depths of the mine, and his face immediately changed. The cultivation method that Jianchen practices really is impressive. It actually allows him to absorb origin energy so quickly, and he can even absorb the origin energy of the entire mine. This high-grade divine crystal mine is the lifeblood of those powerful clans in the Dong'an province. They'll never give up on it so easily. I wonder what they're going to do. As Jianchen absorbed the high-grade divine crystals, the two supervising gods made their way back to the provincial city as quickly as well. They told all the powerful clans in the city about what had happened in the Dark Cloud Mountains without hiding any details at all. All the clans immediately became angered when they heard how the Dark Cloud Mountains had been taken away. The ancestors of over 10 powerful clans gathered together, as they discussed how they were supposed to handle the situation with darkened faces. The powerful clans had begun to treat the mine in the Dark Cloud Mountains as their lifeblood long ago. This was because the mine was directly connected to the future developments and hopes of their clans. It was extremely important. Baiziki, is that true? Was the person who took over the mountain range really an overgod? A red-robed middle-aged man asked in a firm voice. The white-robed old man did not dare to hesitate at all. He immediately stood up and answered. I couldn't see through his strength, but he defeated the two of us with a casual strike. That's strength that has exceeded late god, so he must be an overgod. He also comprehended the laws of the sword. The red-robed middle-aged man was a late god, and he seemed to be close to becoming an overgod. He was one of the ancestors of the 3 most powerful clans in the Dong'an province, the Hua family. He comprehended the laws of fire. An overgod who has comprehended the laws of the sword? Are you talking about Ling Hogong from the sword-seeking province? The middle-aged man became extremely stern. Chapter 1768. The 10th layer of the chaotic body too. I've seen Ling Hogong before. He's not Ling Hogong. He doesn't even seem like a person from our divine kingdom of Pingtian. As aside from Ling Hogong, we don't have any other overgod who has also comprehended the laws of the sword. The white-robed old man said firmly. Baiziki, do you remember his appearance? This time, the person who spoke was an old man with a regular appearance. The presence he gave off had also reached late god. The white-robed old man nodded. He extended a finger and began to draw in the empty air. Using origin energy, he drew an image of Jianchen very soon. I've never seen this person before. Even though I haven't seen all the overgods of our kingdom before, I've heard of a few of them, and there's definitely not a person like that. This person isn't from our divine kingdom of Pingtian. Looks like this person came from another divine kingdom. Humph. The overgods of other divine kingdoms actually wants to come here and throw their weight around. Do they really think that we don't have overgods in our divine kingdom? Aside from the god who came from the Wainer clan, all the other gods expressed how they had never seen Jianchen before. Their voices were filled with fury. Clearly, these people had not entered God King Duanmu's dwelling. Even if they did go in, they had not met Jianchen. Only the god from the Wainer clan had lost his calm. He cried out inside. How is this possible? How is he still alive? He actually made it out of God King Duanmu's dwelling alive? He wasn't this powerful a few years ago either. How did he become an overgod now? Do I tell them about Jianchen? The early god from the Wainer clan hesitated. However, his face darkened soon afterwards and he thought, the jades bound to the lives of our 2 mid-gods shattered. They've clearly fallen in God King Duanmu's dwelling. Now that the Wainer clan only has 2 early gods, it's already impossible for us to maintain a stable footing in the provincial city any longer. We'll probably have to leave the provincial city once the public finds out about the deaths of Wainer T and Wainer Sr. Whatever. It's not like our Wainer clan can obtain the mine now. Let's not take part in this matter. Since that person called Jianchen made it out of God King Duanmu's dwelling alive, where even overgods were unable to handle him, it's best if our Wainer clan doesn't try to offend them anymore. just in case it draws in a disaster. As for God King Duanmu's jade sai, it's all because I treated the matter with too much simplicity. The early god of the Wainer clan left in dejection. He did not reveal any information regarding Jianshen. Only the Wainer clan possessed some information about Jianshen in the entire provincial city. Naturally, the other powerful clans had no idea if he did not mention it. Please do not worry, everyone. I have some connections with Overgod Binglu from the Yubing clan of the Frigid Snow province. I'll ask him to come over immediately and set things straight for us, said the old man who had questioned Bai Zi earlier. Cold light shone in his eyes. Clearly he had been angered as well. The old man was from the Nanyan clan, and he was one of the 3 most powerful people in the Dong'an province along with the middle-aged man in red robes. The gods of the Dong'an province all beamed when they heard that. Overgod Binglu was a famed expert. It was said that he had reached the peak of early Overgod, and was only a step away from mid-Overgod. Swish! With a gentle, almost undetectable breeze, the late god from the Nanyan clan left the place as he hurried off to the Frigid Snow province. The Frigid Snow province was covered in snow and ice all year round. Its climate was extremely frigid. It was a world of ice. No matter how harshly the burning sun shone, it was unable to melt the world. There was an extremely ancient legend about the Frigid Snow province. It was said that before the divine kingdom of Pingtian had been founded, a supreme primordial realm expert had come and a droplet of his frigid blood had fallen on the land, creating this special environment. It was said that the changes here had attracted many famous experts in the region. Even god kings had hurried over from afar to investigate the place, but they found nothing in the end. As time went on, the Frigid Snow province lost its mystique and faded out of public view. In the end, it became a part of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. The Frigid Snow province had now become the world of the Yubing clan, as they possessed an overgod. It was exactly because of their overgod that the Yubing clan was able to reign supreme in the entire province. An old man had appeared outside the entrance of the Yubing clan. He was the ancestor of the Nanyan clan who had hurried over from the Dong'an province. The ancestor of the Nanyan clan maintained an extremely low profile after his arrival. With a flip of his hand, an ancient jade appeared in his hand. Just as he took the jade to a guard, a white-robed child happened to walk out. The child was not old, only 6 or 7 years of age. He was only at sainthood as well, but the eyes of the guards at the entrance of the Yubing clan narrowed with his appearance. Their gazes towards the child became polite. This was because they recognized the child. Although he was not powerful, he served the ancestor of the clan, Binglu. The child directly arrived before the ancestor of the Nanyan clan and clasped his fist towards him. "Senior, the ancestor invites you inside. Please come in with me." The old man from the Nanyan clan was clearly surprised. He thought to himself, "I never thought that Binglu would know as soon as I arrived here." He even sent someone to receive me, which means he hasn't forgotten about the past at all. With a sigh, the ancestor of the Nanyan clan followed the child, and arrived on an icy mountain in the hill. When he arrived there, his eyes narrowed. He stared ahead fixedly. 100 meters away, the hunchbacked Binglu stood with his dragon-headed staff on a piece of ice. The ancestor of the Nanyan clan's face became mixed when he saw the familiar figure. He could not help but think back to the days he spent roaming the world with Binglu. Many years ago, the two of them became good friends. They had roamed the world when they were gods in the past, yet Binglu had already become an overgod now, while he remained a god. The difference in strength seemed to have physically separated the two of them, causing them to drift apart unknowingly. "Nanyan Tong, it has been several dozen millennia since we've seen each other." Binglu slowly stood up and sighed. Time really did fly like an arrow. He felt slightly unfamiliar when he saw Nanyan Tong today. "Yeah, it has been several tens of thousand years. Time really does fly," said Nanyan Tong. As he looked at his old friend, he suddenly felt that everyone had changed. If it were not for the significance of the matter that had forced him to run out of choices, he really did not want to disturb his familiar, yet now unfamiliar friend. Binglu arrived before Nanyan Tong. With a wave of his hand, a table completely condensed from ice appeared silently. Bing Lu gestured for Nanyun Tong to sit down before slowly sitting down. Nanyun Tong did not hold back, and sat down before Bing Lu. Although there was a huge difference between their strength, there was no need for him to behave as politely as he would to other overgods before Bing Lu. Nanyun Tong, you've especially come here today, and it is probably not just because you want to visit me. Tell me what troubles you've encountered. If it's within my abilities, I will definitely assist you, said Bing Lu. Chapter 1769, The 10th Layer of the Chaotic Body 3. I really can't hide anything from you, Nanyun Tong smiled bitterly. He sighed gently and said slowly, Bing Lu, I've really come across quite a large problem in the Dong'an province this time. As Bing Lu listened to Nanyun Tong, he waved his hand gently. Ice moved and immediately condensed into 2 cups. He took out some precious liquor from his space ring, and poured it into the 2 ice cups, and gestured for Nanyun Tong to drink. Nanyun Tong lifted up the cup with both hands. After clinking it with Bing Lu's cup, he downed the whole thing and said slowly, a small high-grade divine crystal mine has appeared in our Dong'an province. Even though it's only a small mine, it holds great importance to our entire province. It also relates to the future of our Nanyun clan. It's just that an overgod from another divine kingdom has taken over the mine. With the current strength of the province, no one can threaten an overgod, so I purposefully came to visit you to see if you could resolve the matter. Bing Lu glanced at Nanyun Tong deeply and smiled gently. Since you've come to me for a matter like that, it looks like your Nanyun clan takes quite a large portion of the divine crystals. If you don't get the mine back, your Nanyun clan will be the one that suffers the greatest losses. Nanyun Tong smiled awkwardly. You're joking, brother Bing Lu. Right now my Nanyun clan, the Hua family, and the Dong family take 25% of all the divine crystals mined. The other 75% is split among the other clans. Nanyun Tong paused there. Then he smiled deeply and continued. It's just that quite a few gods of the other clans in our provincial city have entered God King Duanmu's dwelling, but only a few have emerged. Aside from the god that our Nanyun clan lost a few years ago, we haven't lost anyone else. Nanyun Tong had asked for Bing Lu to take back the mine for the Dong'an province, because he had already expected that the powerful clans would suffer heavy losses with the opening of God King Duanmu's dwelling. Many of them would even lose the right to remain in the provincial city, so how the divine crystals would be split would definitely be redecided. At that time, his Nanyun clan could borrow Bing Lu to claim the largest share. Bing Lu nodded and said with ease, Alright, I'll help you. Nanyun Tong, I hope you can become an overgod soon. Nanyun Tong immediately beamed with joy when he heard Bing Lu's reply. He seemed to think of something and added, Oh right, the overgod who took over the mine seems to have comprehended the laws of the sword. An overgod who has comprehended the laws of the sword? Nanyun Tong would have been better off if he had not mentioned that. Bing Lu's eyes immediately narrowed when he heard these words. As an overgod, Bing Lu naturally had information that a god like Nanyun Tong could not get his hands on. Someone like Nanyun Tong would have only heard about a few overgods in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, while Bing Lu would know much more than the overgods in the entire divine kingdom. He would basically know all the overgods in the neighboring divine kingdoms as well. He also knew that aside from Ling Hogong and Jianchen who he had worked with in God King Duanmu's dwelling, there were no other overgods who comprehended the laws of the sword. Nanyun Tong, do you know what the overgod looks like? Bing Lu stared at Nanyun Tong in interest. His leisurely appearance had vanished, and a smear of sternness appeared. Bing Lu's change stunned Nanyun Tong. He suddenly had an extremely ill omen. However, he still did not hesitate. Through his fantastic memory, he drew the person drawn by Ziki again. To no surprise, his drawing depicted Jianchen. When Bing Lu saw that it was actually Jianchen, his face immediately changed. He gently placed down the ice cup in his hands and sighed softly. Brother Bing Lu, do you know this person? Nanyun Tong could not help but ask. Bing Lu responded after a while of silence. I do know this person. He was one of the people who entered the dwelling first with God King Duanmu's jade. He's extremely powerful. 2 early overgods died at his hands in the dwelling. Nanyun Tong revealed a rather ugly expression. He murmured. He was actually one of the people to enter the dwelling first? Was he the one who killed the gods from my Nanyun clan and the Hua family several years ago? Bing Lu stared at Nanyun Tong sternly and said, Nanyun Tong, considering that we once roamed the world together, I have to warn you to not offend this person. He is far more complicated than he seems. Not only is he extremely powerful, but there's also a supreme expert behind him as well. Bing Lu could not help but think of Fairy Hao Yu when he mentioned the supreme expert. Even when she was just a fragile soul, she was able to make it through the power of laws from God King Duanmu, who already had a foot planted in the primordial realm. That explained everything. It explained that Fairy Hao Yu was extremely powerful in her past life, and her comprehension of laws had surpassed God King Duanmu's. However, Bing Lu did not know that the young man with a fan who saved Jianchen in the end came from an extremely great background as well. He actually possessed a God King as a personal guard. Nanyun Tong's face immediately changed when he heard Bing Lu's serious warning. Don't look into the death of your god anymore. And it's best if the clans in the Dong'an province stop fantasizing about the high-grade divine crystal mine. What he lacks the most right now is cultivation resources like divine crystals, continued Bing Lu. He was afraid that Nanyun Tong would offend Jianchen. Several days later, Nanyun Tong returned to the Dong'an province. He did not tell everyone about his conversation with Bing Lu, nor did he give any detailed explanation. He directly announced that his Nanyun clan would give up on the mine in the Dark Cloud Mountains and would no longer take part in the matter. The departure of the Nanyun clan immediately caused quite a large disturbance in the provincial city. Although the Nanyun clan did not give any proper explanation, the other powerful clans in the provincial city were not stupid either. They could tell that they could not afford to provoke the overgod who had taken over the mine from the Nanyun clan's actions. The Hor family and the Dong family maintained their silence over the matter of the mountain range after the Nanyun clan announced that they were backing out. Even the three most powerful clans in the Dong'an province were unwilling to touch the Dark Cloud Mountains anymore, so the other clans in the provincial city naturally understood that they probably would not be able to get the mine back. Even though they all felt despaired, there was nothing they could do about it. It has been 3 months. Those clans in the provincial city still haven't moved, the black-clothed Shen Jian murmured as he sat on the peak of a mountain, gazing towards the provincial city. Now it had already been 3 months since Jianchen started cultivating. Shen Jian had always been waiting for the clans during that period of time, but it was evident that not a single soul from the provincial city had come. Many of the divine crystals deep underground had been reduced to regular stone after losing all their origin energy during Jianchen's 3 months of cultivation. Chapter 1770. The 10th layer of the chaotic body 4. In the depths of the mine, Jianchen sat in the air as dense and pure origin energy gathered from the surroundings. It gathered so quickly that it basically surpassed Jianchen's rate of absorption, causing the origin energy that condensed around Jianchen to almost solidify. It had become a cocoon completely condensed from origin energy that enveloped Jianchen. After all, Jianchen currently resided within a high-grade divine crystal mine. There was an astronomical number of hidden high-grade divine crystals in the rock around him, making it equivalent to him sitting among divine crystals. The rate at which origin energy gathered over would obviously be shocking. Jianchen was like a bottomless hole as he rapidly absorbed the pure origin energy in his surroundings. As tremendous quantities of origin energy were absorbed and then refined, his chaotic Niden swelled slowly at a visible rate. Even though the chaotic Niden grew at an extremely slow rate, only by a tiny portion each day, it was an unbelievable rate to Jianchen, who had possessed the chaotic body for so many years already. It was far, far faster compared to when he absorbed the energy of the Yinyang Saint Rock, or the power from the evil spirit. This was all due to the purity of the origin energy within the high-grade divine crystals he absorbed. Not only were they extremely easy to absorb, but refining the energy was much less arduous as well. It was exactly because of this that Jianchen's chaotic Niden had grown from the size of a pigeon's egg to a chicken's egg in just 3 short months of cultivating here. At this rate, my chaotic Niden will probably reach the limits of the 9th layer in a year, Jianchen thought. At the same time, he became slightly excitedly. He was eager for the 10th layer of the chaotic body. The 9th layer of the chaotic body only made his cultivation level equivalent to deities. Once he broke through to the 10th layer, his level of cultivation would directly reach gods. Although the 10th layer of the chaotic body would not be able to elevate his cultivation to over God, his battle prowess would rise tremendously. After all, just the toughness of the chaotic body at the 10th layer would be able to endure attacks from gods. Even if he did not block or dodge, gods would not be able to harm him at all. The 10th layer of the chaotic body was simply too powerful. Even if regular gods launched full-powered attacks at Jianchen, they would not be able to get through his skin. They could only draw blood if their attacks had surpassed the limits of what the chaotic body could endure. This was the advantage of the chaotic body. Any cultivator of the chaotic body could claim to be invincible among the same realm of cultivation. Only prodigies that also claimed the title of being invincible had the right to challenge them. But even with that, the outcome would more often be the victory of the chaotic body than defeat. Of course, being invincible among the same level of cultivation was not actually being the strongest at the same level of cultivation. As long as they could defeat 99% of people at the same level of cultivation, and challenge those at higher cultivation levels, they would earn the title of invincible. This was because there would be far too few opponents at the same level of cultivation as them. Even with an entire plane or major planet in perspective, there would only be a handful. Nothing happened as Jianchen cultivated. The people of the Dong'an province did not come to disturb him, which slightly surprised Jianchen. Naturally, Jianchen did not know that the reason why he could cultivate in peace after taking over the mine was all because of what Bing Lu had told Nanyun Tong. In the blink of an eye, another 15 months passed. Jianchen had already been cultivating there for 1.5 years now. The chaotic Niden in his dantian had finally reached the size of a fist after the 1.5 years of cultivation. He had reached the limits of the 9th layer. During this period of time, he had been cultivating many times faster than he had ever cultivated on the Tianyuan continent. However, Jianchen did not stop there. He continued to absorb the surrounding origin energy wildly. Finally, after another half a month, the amount of chaotic force he possessed exceeded what his chaotic Niden could possess. With a boom, surging chaotic force rampaged through Jianchen's body violently and destructively. His body immediately began to tremble violently as he paled in that instance as well. His forehead became covered in cold sweat. Droplets of blood had even oozed out of his powers as they pulsed with energy, causing Jianchen to become all bloodied. The cultivator of the chaotic body had to endure the excruciating pain of reforging the body every time they broke through. At the same time, the toughness of the body would leap up qualitatively with each breakthrough. Chaotic force was just too brutal. Without a tough body, it was impossible to endure the power of chaotic force, so with each breakthrough, the chaotic force would become more powerful and break the balance between the body. It would injure the body as it circulated. Hence, it brought on excruciating pain. Only when the chaotic body reached the same level as the chaotic force, becoming just as powerful, would the chaotic force no longer be able to harm the body as it circulated. Only then would the pain disappear. This was the weakness of the ordinary chaotic body. The possessor of the innate chaotic body would not have to endure the pain of reforging their body or the agony of shattering the chaotic Niden 18 times. Several days later, Jianchen made his way out of the mine steadily in a new set of white robes. In the past 1.5 years, the mine had lost all of its divine crystals as well, being reduced to a regular mountain range. Several kilometers away, Xinjian's eyes snapped open when Jianchen made his way out of the mine. With a flash, he suddenly vanished from the mountain peak. When he appeared again, he had already arrived before Jianchen. Xinjian's eyes shone brightly as he stared at Jianchen. Jianchen's cultivation method was different, and he was actually unable to tell if Jianchen's strength had broken through at all. He could only vaguely sense that his presence seemed to have become much more powerful than before. At the same time, his slender body seemed to contain an extremely terrifying and powerful energy. "You broke through?" Xinjian asked Jianchen. Jianchen smiled faintly and said, Try attacking me." With that, a gleam of light flashed through Shen Jian's eyes. With the clear thrum of a sword, the dark cloudstream sword appeared in his hand in a single moment. He wielded the sword as he stabbed towards Jian Chen with lightning speed, utilizing the power from the laws of the sword. Since Shen Jian knew just how powerful Jian Chen was, he did not hold back his strength even though he did not use a battle skill. With his late god level of comprehension and early god level of cultivation, his strike was no weaker than a mid-god's attack. It was even slightly stronger than attacks from regular mid-gods. This was because he comprehended the laws of the sword, which was known to be one of the most powerful offensive laws available. Chapter 1771. Separation. However, Jian Chen did not defend against Shen Jian's attack at all. He smiled as he stood there leisurely with his hands behind his back. He wanted to use the toughness of his body to resist Shen Jian's attack. With dazzling light, Shen Jian's cloudstream sword landed on Jian Chen's chest. It radiated with powerful sword qi, and Jian Chen's clothes were immediately reduced to dust. Not a single shred remained. It revealed his stature, which was rather slender. The dark cloudstream sword pressed against Jian Chen's chest with its sharp edge as it shone brightly. However, to Shen Jian's disbelief, Jian Chen stopped the attack with his body and emerged completely unscathed. Shen Jian's attack that was even stronger than the attack of regular mid-gods had failed to even leave a mark on Jian Chen. The surging light around the cloudstream sword completely failed to injure Jian Chen as well. Shen Jian's eyes narrowed suddenly at this sight as disbelief flooded his face. He already knew that Jian Chen's body was extremely tough. Back when Jian Chen fought Xiongzhong on the Tianyuan continent, he was clearly not as powerful. Yet he managed to drive back Xiongzhong thanks to the toughness of his body and superior regeneration. Afterwards, Shen Jian personally fought Jian Chen in outer space. The battle had cleaved the moon in half. Back then, Shen Jian's strength had completely exceeded Jian Chen's, but in the end, Jian Chen managed to cause heavy wounds to both sides thanks to the toughness of his body and unimaginable regeneration. However, Shen Jian had never thought that Jian Chen's body would reach such an unbelievable toughness today. His full-powered strike had failed to harm Jian Chen at all. This left Shen Jian utterly shocked. Looking at his unscathed chest, Jian Chen was pleased with himself and nodded. He said, "I estimate that mid-gods are unable to harm me at all. Only when attacks have reached the level of late god, can they draw blood." What a tough body. Shen Jian could not help but sigh in amazement as he drew back the cloudstream sword. Let alone overgods. Even god kings could not endure an attack from a mid-god, and emerge unscathed without blocking at all. In fact, even some primordial realm experts might not be able to achieve that. Gods were unable to threaten overgods or god kings because the origin energy they possessed was far more powerful. Even the laws they had comprehended were more powerful. Overgods and god kings only needed to use origin energy or the power of laws to cast down a layer of defense, and gods would struggle to get through it. If they did not use origin energy or the laws and used their body instead, even god kings would probably end up having the sword driven through their entire body. Even some weaker primordial realm experts would not be able to endure an attack from a god. Of course, that was unless they practiced a cultivation method that forged the body, making their bodies extraordinarily tough. It was also exactly because of this that in both the Saints' world and on the Tianyuan continent, people who were clearly much weaker could kill a few heavily injured experts, even if the disparity in strength led to the weaker party being looked down upon as ants. It was exactly due to the fragility of their bodies. Once they lost their powerful cultivation, even the existences that they had treated as ants in the past could threaten their lives. However, Jian Chen's chaotic body was an exception. Even if he was heavily injured, even if he was unconscious, mid-gods would not be able to kill him thanks to the current toughness of his chaotic body. They would fail to even leave a mark on his body. I'm confident about facing late gods with my current strength. Even if I can't defeat them, I can last for quite a while with the recovery of my body and healing pills. The only pity is that my abilities with Radiant Saint Force have fallen behind, Jian Chen said confidently. His Radiant Saint Force remained at the 9th class, making it equivalent to Saint Emperor. However, his cultivation had already reached the level of gods. Class 9, Radiant Saint Force was unable to help him much anymore. Shen Jian nodded sympathetically. If your Radiant Saint Force can catch up to the strength of your body, your recovery rate will be even more impressive. Any wounds you receive will probably recover before you're able to receive a second wound. They won't be able to kill you unless they completely exceed you in strength. Oh right, why can't you continue to progress with the cultivation of your Radiant Saint Force? Shen Jian asked again. He felt like the weakness of the Radiant Saint Force had become a flaw in Jian Chen's defenses. Jian Chen furrowed his brows as he sank into his thoughts. He said, after I condensed my soul core with Radiant Saint Force, I've been unable to advance any further. I heard from Fairy Hao Yu in the past that once I condense the soul core, the 7-colored flower must bloom, and I must condense a soul tree. Making the 7-colored flower bloom and condensing a soul tree should be the upcoming cultivation levels for Radiant Saint Force. It's just that no one has ever reached such a level on the Tianyuan continent, and I've only learned a limited amount of information from Fairy Hao Yu, so I don't know what it's about. After a moment of silence, Shen Jian said, I think you just lack the cultivation method for Radiant Saint Force. Your Radiant Saint Force will only continue to progress after you find the cultivation method. That's what I was thinking too, Jian Chen agreed. Not only did he lack the further cultivation methods for Radiant Saint Force, but he also lacked the techniques and method to use Martial Soul Force. Nodding gently, Jian Chen stopped thinking about the matter. It was useless if he thought about it right now anyway. Soon afterwards, he waved his hand and 2 blocks of high-grade divine crystals suddenly appeared. They landed on the ground with heavy thuds. Jian Chen had directly taken out 2 of the 3 blocks of high-grade divine crystal he had obtained from the dwelling of God King Duanmu's disciple. He pointed towards the 2 blocks and said to Shen Jian, I'm going to God King Duanmu's dwelling immediately, and I might be able to help Fairy Hao Yu in time. Shen Jian, take these 2 blocks. You can break them up in the royal city into mid-grade divine crystals for cultivation. A block of high-grade divine crystal was a meter in length, width and depth, while a standard divine crystal was 1 centimeter in length, width and depth. As a result, a block of divine crystal was equivalent to 1 million of the corresponding standard divine crystals. 2 blocks of high-grade divine crystals would be equivalent to 200 million standard mid-grade divine crystals. Shen Jian did not hold back. He put the 2 blocks away straightforwardly. He would probably be unable to reach mid-god if he directly absorbed the 2 blocks of high-grade divine crystals, but once he broke them up, it would be enough for him to reach late god. Afterwards, Jian Chen and Shen Jian decided to separate for the first time after coming to the Saints' World. Jian Chen directly headed off for God King Duanmu's dwelling while Shen Jian headed to the royal city with the 2 blocks of high-grade divine crystal. The 2 blocks of divine crystal were very valuable, but with Shen Jian's current strength, no one was able to threaten him unless he encountered overgods. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.